Hello, dear friends. So glad you could join us at Harry Flicks. Today's narrative adventure is titled What If Harry Was Raised by the Goblins of Gringotts? Goblin warrior Harry, we put our heart into every story we share. If you appreciate our work, showing some love with a like and subscribe would make our day. The story begins now. Chapter 1, The Boy in the Vault. The night air bit with unusual sharpness for early November as three goblins darted through the shadows of Diagon Alley. Their movements were quick and precise, nothing like the shuffling bank tellers wizards were accustomed to seeing during business hours. Security breach, northeastern quadrant, Griphook hissed, his clawed fingers tightening around a silver detection instrument. Something crossed our outer wards. Silverclaw, head of Gringotts Night Security, narrowed his eyes. At 4 feet tall, he stood taller than most goblins, with battle scars crisscrossing his face and arms. Wizard or creature? Neither. Both. Griphook frowned at his instrument. The signatures, strange. The third goblin, Nagnok, unsheathed a curved blade from his belt. Could be those werewolf thieves from Sussex trying their luck again. Silverclaw sniffed the air. No wolf scent. Instead, something burned his nostrils, residual magic, powerful and raw. This way. They rounded the corner into Nocturne Alley, detection instruments humming louder as they approached a narrow gap between buildings. Silverclaw raised a hand, halting his companions, then crept forward alone. A bundle lay half-concealed behind a stack of empty crates. Silverclaw prodded it with his blade's tip, then froze as the bundle shifted and a soft whimper emerged. By gold and silver, he muttered, sheathing his weapon and carefully pulling back the blanket's edge. Two bright green eyes stared up at him, innocent and questioning in a small face marked by a lightning bolt scar still faintly glowing with magical residue. A human child. Griphook appeared at his shoulder. What's it doing outside our? His words died as he spotted the scar. That's not possible. Silverclaw lifted the child, who couldn't be more than 15 months old. Get Ragnarok. Now. 20 minutes later, 6 goblins stood in a secure chamber deep beneath Gringotts. The baby sat on a stone table, playing contentedly with a gold coin while Ragnarok, director of the London branch, examined the parchment Silverclaw had found tucked into the blankets. Harry Potter, Ragnarok read, his voice gravelly with disbelief. Left in our protection until his schooling age. Gornik, the eldest goblin present, leaned on his gnarled staff. The Potter child? The one they're calling the boy who lived? The very same. Ragnarok set down the parchment. Our intelligence network confirms it. Lily and James Potter, murdered 3 days ago. Dark Lord vanished. And now this child appears on our doorstep. Silverclaw watched the baby, Harry, who had somehow managed to balance the gold coin on his nose, giggling at his own trick. Who left him? Dumbledore, spat Ragnarok. His magical signature is all over the note. Thinks he can use Gringotts as his personal orphanage. The room fell silent except for the baby's happy noises as he dropped the coin and reached for it again. Gornik hobbled closer to examine the child. The scar reeks of death magic. Powerful curse residue. Which makes this even more insulting, said Nagnok. Leaving cursed wizard children at our door. We should contact their ministry immediately. Silverclaw hadn't taken his eyes off Harry. And what would the ministry do? The rumors are already spreading through Wizard Wireless. They're calling him their savior. All the more reason to return him, Griphook argued. They'll tear apart the bank stone by stone if they think we've stolen their precious hero. Ragnarok's face twisted into what might have been a smile on a less fearsome creature. Unless we don't tell them. The other goblins stared at him. Consider what we have here, Ragnarok continued, pacing around the table. The most famous magical child in Britain, perhaps the world. Left carelessly at our door with only a note. A child who, according to our sources, somehow defeated the most powerful dark wizard in generations. You can't seriously suggest we keep a human child, Nagnok protested. Why not? Ragnok countered. Think of the intelligence value. Think of what he might know, what he might be capable of. And imagine wizards' faces when their precious savior emerges from Gringotts in 10 years, speaking our tongue and knowing our ways. Harry chose that moment to look directly at Silverclaw and smile, revealing tiny teeth and dimpled cheeks. Something tightened in the goblin warrior's chest, a feeling he immediately tried to suppress. He's not a trophy or a weapon, Silverclaw said quietly. He's a child. Since when does Silverclaw the Scarred speak of human children with such concern? Gornik asked with a shrewd look. Silverclaw didn't answer. He'd fought in the last goblin uprising, had scars from wizard curses across his back. He had every reason to hate wizard kind. Yet something about this small, orphaned creature stirred something protective in him. I'll take responsibility for him, he said suddenly, surprising even himself. Train him in our ways. If he proves unworthy or dangerous, we can reconsider. Ragnok studied Silverclaw carefully, then nodded. Very well. The Potter child remains under Gringotts' protection, in Silverclaw's care. Let no word of this reach wizard ears. As the others filed out, Silverclaw remained, watching Harry finally succeed in picking up the gold coin. The baby offered it to him with a proud smile. You've caused quite a stir, little wizard, Silverclaw murmured, accepting the coin. Let's see what you're made of. Hold your arm higher. A goblin warrior never exposes his center. Harry, now 7 years old, adjusted his stance, raising the small training dagger to protect his torso. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he faced off against Silverclaw in the training cavern 3 levels beneath the main bank floor. Better, Silverclaw growled. Now advance. Harry lunged forward, his movements quick if not perfectly graceful. Human limbs were longer, clumsier than goblin ones, but he'd adapted well over the years. He feinted left, then struck right, catching Silverclaw's blade with a metallic clang. Good. Again. They trained for another hour until Harry's arms shook with exhaustion. Only then did Silverclaw sheath his blade. You're improving, he said, which from him was high praise indeed. Harry's face split into a grin, green eyes bright behind the silver-rimmed glasses a goblin metalsmith had crafted for him last year. He was small for a human child his age, goblin diets and underground living didn't lend themselves to growth spurts, but wiry and fast. Can I work in the forges today? Harry asked eagerly, wiping his face on his sleeve. Gornik said I could help with the silver sorting. Silverclaw grunted. After your studies. Blacktooth is waiting in the archives. Harry's face fell. More wizard history. But it's so boring. All those goblin rebellions where we somehow always lose despite being clearly superior. A rare smile flickered across Silverclaw's face. History is written by the victors, young one. That doesn't make it truth. Now go, before Blacktooth docks your forge privileges altogether. Harry raced off through the twisting stone corridors, passing goblins who nodded respectfully or ignored him completely, depending on their rank and disposition. After 7 years, most had grown accustomed to the human child in their midst, though some still regarded him with suspicion. The archive sprawled across an entire level of Gringotts' underground complex. Ancient tomes, scrolls, and accounting ledgers dating back to the bank's founding lined shelves carved directly into the bedrock. Blacktooth, a wizened goblin with spectacles perched on his long nose, waited impatiently by a stone table piled with books. Late again, young Potter, he snapped. Perhaps counting minutes is too complex for human minds. Sorry, Blacktooth, Harry replied, sliding onto the stone bench. Silverclaw was teaching me the slicing feint. Blacktooth snorted. Combat skills are well and good, but a mind is a warrior's greatest weapon. Now, we were discussing the Treaty of 1752. Recite the primary terms. Harry sighed and launched into the recitation. After 2 hours of treaties, rebellions, and financial regulations, Blacktooth finally released him. Harry bolted toward the forges, his favorite place in all of Gringotts. Heat hit him like a wall as he entered. Dozens of goblins worked the fires, hammering precious metals into goblin-made treasures renowned throughout the wizarding world. Harry slipped on a leather apron and approached Gornik's station. "Ah, young Potter," Gornik said without looking up from the delicate silver chain he was crafting. "Right on time. See those ingots? Sort by purity, then bring me the highest grade." Harry set to work happily, his fingers dancing over the silver pieces. Years of training had given him an almost goblin-like sensitivity to metal quality. He could feel the magic pulsing in the purest pieces, a talent that had earned him rare respect among the forge masters. "This one's best," he said, presenting an ingot to Gornik. 98% pure with traces of moonstone. Gornik examined it critically. "Correct. Your touch is improving." He handed Harry a small hammer. "You may assist with the linking." Hours passed in the comforting rhythm of the forge. Here, Harry felt most at home, the heat, the precise metalwork, the respect earned through skill rather than fame or birth. In the wizarding world above, he was apparently a celebrity, though he'd only been to Diagon Alley a handful of times, heavily disguised and closely guarded. Here, he was just Harry, Silverclaw's unusual apprentice. As the shift ended, Harry reluctantly cleaned his station. "Can I come back tomorrow?" Gornik's wrinkled face remained impassive. "If your other studies permit." "Now go, I believe Nagrek is looking for you." Harry's good mood evaporated. Nagrek, Silverclaw's nephew, was a goblin near Harry's age who'd made it his mission to remind Harry of his outsider status at every opportunity. Sure enough, Nagrek was waiting in the corridor outside the forges, leaning against the wall with a smirk on his sharp-featured face. "There's the human," he said in gobbledygook. "Enjoying playing with goblin tools that aren't made for your clumsy hands?" Harry answered in the same language, his accent flawless after years of immersion. "At least I'm allowed in the forges. Didn't you get banned last month for melting that gold shipment?" Nagrek's yellowish eyes narrowed. "An accident. Unlike your entire existence here." "What's that supposed to mean?" "The elders meet tonight about you." Nagrek pushed off from the wall, circling Harry predatorily. "I overheard my father talking. The Wizard Bank customers are asking questions about a human child seen in the lower halls. Some suspect who you really are." Harry's stomach tightened. "You're making that up." "Am I? Why do you think they've kept you hidden all these years?" "You're a liability, human. A famous one." Nagrek bared his pointed teeth. "Maybe they'll finally send you back to your own kind." Harry lunged forward, shoving Nagrek hard against the stone wall. "I am with my own kind. I'm as much a goblin as you are." "Prove it," Nagrek hissed. Sunset. The gauntlet. "Unless you're afraid." Harry's heart raced. The gauntlet was a training course deep in the caverns below the bank, dangerous even for goblin youths, potentially deadly for a human child. But backing down would only confirm Nagrek's taunts. "I'll be there," Harry said, releasing him. "And when I finish it faster than you, you'll admit I belong here." Nagrek's smile was all malice. "We'll see, human. We'll see." The gauntlet loomed before them, a series of narrow ledges, rope bridges, and climbing walls disappearing into the darkness of a massive cavern. Far below, Harry could hear the rush of underground rivers. "Still time to admit you're not one of us," Nagrek said, tightening the straps on his climbing gloves. Harry ignored him, checking his own equipment. He was terrified but determined not to show it. 6 other young goblins had gathered to witness the challenge, their expressions ranging from excitement to disapproval. "First one to the gong at the far side wins," said Bogrod, the oldest of the watching goblins. "No sabotage allowed, this tests individual skill only." He raised a small silver hammer. Ready yourselves. Harry and Nagrek took positions at the starting line, crouched and tense. The hammer struck a small gong. Begin. They sprinted forward, hitting the first obstacle, a series of stepping stones across a chasm. Nagrek leapt nimbly from stone to stone, his smaller, lighter body perfectly adapted to the task. Harry followed more carefully, his longer legs both advantage and liability. The second challenge was a climbing wall of smooth stone with only tiny handholds. Here, Nagrek's clawed fingers gave him clear superiority, and he pulled ahead. Harry gritted his teeth, using every technique Silverclaw had taught him, finding creative routes where his human fingers could maintain purchase. By the rope bridge, Harry had fallen nearly 30 seconds behind. The narrow rope swayed treacherously over 100-foot drop to jagged rocks. Halfway across, he heard a snapping sound. The side rope was fraying where it connected to the stone. Sabotage, despite Bogrod's warning. Harry had no time to be angry, the rope was unraveling rapidly. Making a split-second decision, he jumped from the bridge, swinging on the remaining support rope in a wide arc toward the next platform. For one heart-stopping moment, he flew through empty space. Then his feet slammed onto solid stone, the impact sending him rolling. Pain shot through his ankle, but adrenaline pushed him forward. Ahead, Nagrek was already scaling the final challenge, a nearly vertical shaft with alternating handholds on opposite walls, requiring climbers to spider up by pressing against both sides. Harry's ankle throbbed, but a new determination filled him. He'd lived 7 years trying to prove himself to the goblins. This moment wouldn't defeat him. He hit the shaft running and leapt upward, pressing his back against one wall and his feet against the other, using friction and pressure to ascend rather than the conventional handholds. It was a technique Silverclaw had mentioned once, rarely used because it required more height than most goblins possessed. Harry shot upward, passing a startled Nagrek. He pulled himself onto the top platform seconds before his rival, reaching out to strike the victory gong with his palm. The sound echoed through the cavern as Harry collapsed, breathing heavily. Nagrek emerged a moment later, disbelief etched on his features. "Impossible," he sputtered. "You cheated." "He won fairly," came a deep voice from the shadows. Silverclaw stepped into view, arms crossed over his chest. Using his differences as strength rather than weakness. A true goblin lesson. The watching young goblins murmured in reluctant appreciation. Even Bogrod gave a respectful nod. "You knew about this?" Harry asked, still catching his breath. "I suspected Nagrek might challenge you eventually." Silverclaw's severe expression didn't change, but Harry caught the faintest hint of pride in his eyes. "Though I didn't authorize today's timing or the tampered rope." Nagrek looked down, shame and anger warring on his face. "Both of you, come with me," Silverclaw ordered. "The rest of you, return to your quarters. Speak of this to no one." As they followed Silverclaw through the tunnels, Harry expected a severe punishment. Instead, they were led to Ragnarok's private chambers, a rare honor and possibly worse than any punishment. Ragnarok sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of obsidian, surrounded by magical artifacts and accounting ledgers. His sharp eyes took in Harry's disheveled appearance and Nagrek's sullen expression. "Sit," he commanded. When they had, he steepled his long fingers. "Silverclaw tells me you completed the gauntlet, young Potter. Impressive for your kind." "For any kind," Silverclaw corrected quietly. He found creative solutions to disadvantages. Ragnarok nodded slowly. "And you, Nagrek? You challenged a fellow Gringotts ward and tampered with equipment, risking serious injury." Nagrek stared at the floor. "I didn't think he should be treated as one of us. He's human. The boy who lived. He doesn't belong underground." "And yet he has lived among us for 7 years," Ragnarok replied. "Learned our ways, respected our customs, earned his place through merit and skill, as any goblin must." Harry looked up in surprise. Was Ragnarok defending him? Nevertheless, Ragnarok continued, Nagrek raises a relevant concern. Your existence here cannot remain secret forever, Harry Potter. Already, whispers spread through the wizarding world. Questions are asked at our counters. The human ministry grows suspicious. Harry's heart sank. Are you sending me away? No. The word burst from Nagrek unexpectedly, startling everyone. He looked as surprised as the others at his outburst. Ragnarok's eyebrows rose. No. But you just argued he doesn't belong. Nagrek shifted uncomfortably. He doesn't. But, he completed the gauntlet. He earned respect. A strange silence fell. Then Silverclaw made a sound that might have been a chuckle. Well, well. The first sensible thing you've said in years, nephew. Ragnarok studied both boys intently. Perhaps this rivalry has unexpected benefits. Very well. Harry Potter remains with us, for now. But preparations must begin for his eventual return to the wizard world. Return? Harry's voice cracked. But this is my home. And it will remain so, Silverclaw said firmly. But you have a foot in two worlds, young one. Always have. Soon enough, your Hogwarts letter will arrive. I don't want to go to Hogwarts. Harry protested. I want to stay here, finish my metalwork training, join the security forces, and you shall, Ragnarok interrupted. But you must also learn the ways of your birth kind. Knowledge is power, Harry Potter. To navigate both worlds, you need understanding of each. Harry felt Nagrek watching him with a new expression, something almost like respect mixed with the usual resentment. I won't forget who raised me, Harry said quietly. Silverclaw laid a scarred hand on his shoulder. See that you don't. Now, both of you are assigned to vault inventory for the next week as consequence for today's unauthorized adventure. The boys groaned in unison, their first moment of shared feeling. As they left Ragnarok's chambers, Nagrek cleared his throat awkwardly. That rope trick. On the shaft. Teach me. Harry blinked in surprise. You serious? Don't make me ask twice, human. But there was less venom in the word than usual. Harry suppressed a smile. Tomorrow, after inventory. And you can show me that knife-throwing technique you were bragging about last week. Nagrek grunted something that might have been agreement, and they parted ways at the tunnel junction. Later that night, Harry sat on his sleeping platform in the small chamber he'd called home for 7 years. Stone walls carved with goblin runes glowed with soft magical light. His few possessions, training weapons, favorite medals, and books, were neatly arranged on shelves. He pulled out a small silver frame holding the only photograph he had of his parents, dancing and laughing at some long-ago celebration. Silverclaw had given it to him on his 5th birthday, explaining in his gruff way about James and Lily Potter, their fight against Voldemort, their sacrifice. I'll make you proud, Harry whispered to the photo. But I'll make them proud too. He glanced around at his goblin home. Somehow. 3 years passed in the rhythm of goblin life. Harry grew taller and stronger, though still small by human standards. His skills in metalwork, finance, and combat developed under his various tutors' strict guidance. And surprisingly, a grudging friendship formed between him and Nagrek, built on competitive respect and shared mischief in Gringotts' endless tunnels. On the morning of his 11th birthday, Harry sat cross-legged on the forge floor, meticulously crafting a small silver dagger, his coming-of-age project. Goblin tradition dictated that at 11, a young goblin created their first true weapon as a symbol of approaching adulthood. The forge master, Gornik, watched with critical eyes as Harry shaped the blade. Too thin at the tang. It will break under pressure. Harry adjusted his technique, hammering carefully. Better. Acceptable. From Gornik, this was glowing praise. Hours later, Harry held up the finished dagger. Small by adult standards but perfectly proportioned, with a blade that caught the forge light and a handle wrapped in dragon hide. He'd etched protective runes along the silver surface, a mix of goblin symbols and, secretly, the rune for Lily, in honor of his mother. "It will serve," Gornik pronounced after careful examination. "You have learned well, for a human." Before Harry could respond, Silverclaw appeared at the forge entrance. "Harry. Come with me." Something in his guardian's tone made Harry's stomach tighten. He carefully sheathed his new dagger, thanked Gornik, and followed Silverclaw through the tunnels to a small, secure chamber he'd never entered before. Inside, Ragnarok waited with another goblin Harry knew as Griphook, who handled interactions with prominent wizard customers. On the table between them lay a parchment envelope with emerald green writing. "It's here," Silverclaw said simply. Harry stared at the envelope. Even from across the room, he could read the address: Mr. H. Potter, the Golden Vault, Gringotts Bank, London. "Your Hogwarts letter," Ragnarok confirmed. "Right on schedule." Harry didn't reach for it. "I don't want to go." "That is not an option," Ragnarok said firmly. "The wizards would tear apart this bank stone by stone if they discovered we've kept their precious savior hidden all these years. Besides, your parents registered you at birth." "I could refuse." "And then what?" Silverclaw asked. "Live your entire life underground? Never see the sun? That is no life for a human, Harry, however much goblin blood runs in your veins through loyalty and training." Harry knew they were right, but fear clutched at his heart. "They'll expect me to be something I'm not." "Then show them who you truly are," Silverclaw said. "A wizard raised by goblins. Unique. Powerful in ways they cannot imagine." Griphook cleared his throat. "There is also the matter of your inheritance. The Potter vaults can only be fully accessed once you formally enter wizard society." Harry finally picked up the envelope. The parchment felt heavy, official in a way that made his new reality unavoidable. He broke the seal and read the acceptance letter and supply list. "So much wand-waving," he muttered. "Goblins accomplish more complex magic without silly wooden sticks." The corner of Silverclaw's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "True. But you must learn their ways as you've learned ours. Knowledge is power," Harry finished. "I know." He set down the letter. "When do we go to Diagon Alley?" "Tomorrow," Ragnarok decided. "Silverclaw will accompany you. For the first time, you will walk among wizards as yourself, not in disguise." Harry nodded, his mind racing. "I want Nagrek to come too." The goblins exchanged surprised looks. "Unusual," Ragnarok said slowly. "But perhaps wise to have additional security." "Very well." That night, Harry barely slept, alternating between excitement and dread. By morning, he'd made his decision. If he had to enter the wizard world, he would do so proudly as what he was, a goblin-raised wizard, loyal to the nation that had raised him when his own kind abandoned him on a doorstep. He dressed in his finest clothes, a mixture of goblin-styled garments modified for his human frame. At his hip hung his new silver dagger, a visible symbol of his upbringing. His wild black hair had been tied back in the traditional style of a goblin warrior in training, and his lightning scar stood out clearly on his forehead. When he met Silverclaw and Nagrek at the bank's rear entrance, his guardian studied him critically. "You look like a goblin ambassador," Silverclaw observed. "Is this wise?" "It's honest," Harry replied. "I won't hide who raised me." Nagrek snorted. "The wizards will faint dead away. Their precious boy who lived, dressed like one of us." "Good," Harry said with a grim smile. "Then they'll learn something new today." Silverclaw nodded approvingly. "Remember your training. Trust no one. Guard your words. Every wizard will want something from Harry Potter." "But I'm not just Harry Potter," Harry said, straightening his shoulders. "I'm Harry of the Silverclaw line, ward of the Gringotts nation. And it's time the wizard world learned what that means." They exited through a concealed door into the bright sunlight of Diagon Alley. Harry blinked, momentarily disoriented by the open sky and bustling crowds. Instantly, heads began to turn. First came the double takes at seeing a human boy flanked by armed goblins, not the usual bank escorts but warriors in traditional garb. Then came the whispers as people noticed the lightning scar. Within moments, a circle of space had formed around them as shoppers stopped to stare. "It's Harry Potter," someone gasped loudly, and the whispers erupted into excited chatter. Harry kept his face impassive, the way he'd been taught, and walked with the measured stride of a goblin of rank. Nagrek matched him step for step, yellow eyes challenging any wizard who came too close. Their first stop was Madame Malkin's for school robes. The shop fell silent as they entered, the proprietress nearly dropping her pins. "Mr. P. Potter," she stammered. "We've been expecting you these past years, of course, but," her eyes darted nervously to his goblin companions. "I require Hogwarts robes," Harry said in the formal tone used for business transactions. "And they must accommodate this." He touched his sheathed dagger. "Weapons aren't generally, students don't usually," Madame Malkin faltered under Silverclaw's stern gaze. "Of course. Special circumstances. Right this way." As she measured him, whispers continued among the other customers. Harry caught fragments, "Raised by goblins, look at that knife, speaks like them, what was Dumbledore thinking?" Nagrek growled softly at a particularly loud comment. Harry shot him a warning look. The last thing they needed was an incident. After acquiring robes, they proceeded to the bookshop, where Harry selected his required texts plus several additional volumes on wizard law and goblin-wizard relations that caught his eye. History written by the victors, he murmured to Silverclaw, who nodded approvingly. Outside Flourish and Blots, they encountered their first direct confrontation, a tall wizard with long platinum blonde hair and expensive robes, accompanied by a boy around Harry's age who looked like his miniature clone. Well, the man drawled, twirling a silver-topped cane. "The rumors are true. Harry Potter has returned to us at last, though perhaps not quite as expected." Harry assessed the wizard with cool calculation. "Wealthy. Powerful. Dangerous. I was never gone. I've been where I was left, at Gringotts." The man's eyes narrowed. "Lucius Malfoy," he introduced himself with a slight bow that failed to mask his disdain. "And my son, Draco. Starting Hogwarts this year as well." The boy, Draco, stared openly at Harry's goblin-styled clothes and the goblins flanking him. "Father said you were raised by muggles. But you've been with them." He couldn't quite keep the disgust from his voice. Harry felt Nagrek tense beside him. "I was raised by the Gringotts nation, who took me in when wizard kind abandoned me. They've taught me everything worth knowing about magic, honor, and loyalty." Lucius Malfoy's smile turned cold. "Fascinating upbringing. One wonders what Dumbledore was thinking, leaving the savior of the wizarding world with bankers." "Warriors," Harry corrected. "Craftsmen. Scholars. The Goblin Nation is far more than what wizards see across a counter, Mr. Malfoy." A crowd had gathered to watch the exchange. Silverclaw placed a warning hand on Harry's shoulder, they'd attracted too much attention. "We shall see what Hogwarts makes of you, Mr. Potter," Malfoy said silkily. "Come, Draco. We have business elsewhere." As they walked away, Harry heard Draco asking, "Does he even know how to use a wand?" Living with those creatures, Nagrek made a move to follow, but Harry stopped him. "Not worth it. We have more shopping to do." Their final stop was Ollivander's, the wandmaker's shop. As they entered the dusty, narrow store, Harry felt a strange tingling in his fingers, different from the feeling of goblin metalwork but somehow related. "I wondered when I would be seeing you, Mr. Potter," came a soft voice. An old man with wide, pale eyes stepped from the shadows. "Though I confess, I did not expect such interesting companions." Silverclaw remained impassive, but his hand stayed near his weapon. "You seek your first wand, Ollivander continued, though I sense you're no stranger to magic. Goblins perform wandless magic, Harry explained. I've been trained in their techniques. Ollivander's eyebrows rose. Fascinating. Most fascinating. Well, let us see what wand chooses you, Mr. Potter. What followed was nearly an hour of wand testing. Box after box, wand after wand, none seemed right. Some reacted violently, others not at all. Ollivander grew more excited with each failure. Tricky customer. How wonderful. Perhaps, yes, I wonder. He disappeared into the back of the shop and returned with a dusty box. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches. An unusual combination. The moment Harry's fingers closed around the wand, warmth spread up his arm. He raised it and slashed downward in a motion similar to goblin metalworking. Golden and silver sparks erupted from the tip, swirling around him in a double helix. Curious, Ollivander whispered. Very curious. What's curious? Harry asked, still feeling the wand's warmth. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. The phoenix whose feather resides in your wand gave another feather, just one. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. Silence fell. Even Nagrek, who rarely showed interest in wizard matters, leaned forward. Voldemort had the brother wand? Harry asked, ignoring the wandmaker's flinch at the name. Goblins never feared to speak of enemies directly. He who must not be named did terrible things. Great, but terrible. Ollivander's gaze shifted to Silverclaw. I wonder what new greatness we might expect from a wizard raised by goblins, wielding such a powerful wand. Harry paid 7 galleons for the wand, adding it to his purchases. As they left the shop, Silverclaw broke his long silence. That wand-maker sees too much, he muttered. Be careful with that magical stick. It has chosen you for reasons we may not understand. Harry nodded, turning the wand over in his hands. It felt right somehow, yet foreign compared to the direct magic he'd learned from the goblins. Another reminder of the two worlds he straddled. Their final stop was the magical menagerie, where Harry was drawn to a small snowy owl who regarded him with intelligent amber eyes. She's a proud one, the shopkeeper said. Been here for months. Refuses most customers. The owl hooted softly as Harry approached, then hopped willingly onto his offered arm. Nagrek eyed the bird suspiciously. Flying rats with feathers, he grumbled in gobbledygook. Messenger birds are practical, Harry replied in the same language. Besides, she has dignity. He paid for the owl and named her Hedwig, after a warrior queen in goblin history. As they made their way back toward Gringotts, their path was blocked by a giant of a man with a wild beard and kind eyes. Harry, the man boomed. Blimey, it really is you. Last time I saw you, you was just a baby. Harry assessed the newcomer cautiously. Beside him, Silverclaw and Nagrek had tensed, hands near weapons. Rubeus Hagrid, the giant introduced himself. Keeper of keys at Hogwarts. Known your parents, I did. Great wizards, both of them. His eyes grew misty. Can't believe you've been at Gringotts all this time. Dumbledore'll be, well, surprised, I reckon. You knew my parents? Harry couldn't help his curiosity. Course I did. Your dad, always getting into trouble with his friends. And your mum, brightest witch of her age, they said. Hagrid beamed. Got some pictures back at me hut. You'll have ter visit when ye get ter Hogwarts. Something warm bloomed in Harry's chest at the mention of his parents. The goblins had told him what they knew, but they'd had little direct contact with James and Lily Potter. I'd like that, Harry said honestly. Hagrid glanced nervously at the goblins. Right, well, I'm sure these, gentlemen need ter get ye back. See ya at Hogwarts, Harry. As they continued toward the bank, Harry felt the stares and whispers following them. His first day in wizard society had been exactly as challenging as he'd expected, but he'd faced it on his terms, proud of his goblin upbringing. Back inside Gringotts' marble halls, Harry let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The familiar sights and sounds of the bank wrapped around him like a protective cloak. "You did well," Silverclaw said as they descended toward the residential levels. "You showed strength and pride. Did you see their faces?" Negrek added with a sharp-toothed grin. "The boy who lived, dressed as one of us, speaking our tongue." Harry managed a smile, though his mind was racing with everything he'd seen and heard. 1 month until Hogwarts. "I have much to prepare." Silverclaw nodded. "You'll need additional wizard training before you go. I've arranged for a trusted contact to teach you their wand movements and incantations. And you'll continue your goblin studies when you return on breaks," added a new voice. Ragnarok appeared from a side corridor, eyeing Harry's purchases. "We have invested too much in you to lose you entirely to wand wavers." "You won't lose me," Harry promised. "Gringotts is my home. The Goblin Nation is my family." "Good," Ragnarok said. "Because we have plans for you, Harry Potter." "Great plans indeed." That night, Harry arranged his school supplies in his chamber. The wand he set apart, still uncertain about this wizard tool. His new owl, Hedwig, perched on a specially conjured stand, observing her underground surroundings with regal tolerance. He unsheathed his silver dagger, his true coming-of-age symbol, and studied its gleaming surface. In it, he saw reflected both what he was and what he must become, a bridge between two worlds that rarely understood each other. "I am Harry of the Silverclaw line," he whispered to himself. "Ward of Gringotts. Wizard by birth, goblin by raising. And I will make both proud." Outside his chamber, Silverclaw paused, hearing Harry's words. The scarred goblin warrior allowed himself a rare moment of emotion, thinking of the abandoned infant he'd found 11 years ago and the unique young man that child had become. Whatever awaited Harry at Hogwarts, Silverclaw knew one thing with certainty: the wizarding world had no idea what was about to hit it. Chapter 2, Two Worlds Collide. Harry stood on platform 9 3/4, the Hogwarts Express belching steam into the crisp September air. The platform buzzed with activity, parents fussing over children, students shouting greetings to friends, owls hooting irritably in their cages. After years in Gringotts' quiet, orderly halls, the chaos felt overwhelming. "Remember your training," Silverclaw muttered beside him. The goblin wore an elegant human-style suit that did little to disguise his nature, drawing stares from nearby wizard families. "Trust carefully. Observe everything." "I know." Harry adjusted the silver dagger concealed beneath his robes, a special dispensation Silverclaw had negotiated with Dumbledore. His trunk contained a carefully selected mix of required school items and goblin artifacts, including a small forge kit for metalworking practice. Negrek, who'd insisted on coming to see Harry off, scowled at the surrounding wizards. "Look at them gawking. Like they've never seen a goblin outside the bank before." "They probably haven't," Harry pointed out. A whistle blew, signaling 5 minutes until departure. Harry turned to Silverclaw, suddenly reluctant to leave. The gruff goblin had been the closest thing to a father he'd known for 10 years. "I'll write every week," Harry promised. "And I'll be back for Yule celebrations." Silverclaw nodded stiffly. Then, to Harry's shock, he placed both hands on Harry's shoulders, a formal goblin gesture of familial pride rarely given to anyone outside blood relations. "You carry our honor with you," Silverclaw said in gobbledygook. "Show them what it means to be goblin-raised." Harry swallowed the lump in his throat and responded in the same language, "I will bring honor to the Silverclaw line." Negrek shuffled forward awkwardly. "Don't forget everything we taught you just because some wand wavers tell you differently." "Not likely," Harry grinned. "Keep practicing that dagger flip. I'll test you when I'm back." With a final nod to his goblin family, Harry boarded the train, finding an empty compartment near the back. He stowed his trunk and sat by the window, watching Silverclaw and Nagrek on the platform. They stood straight-backed and proud amid the wizard families, ignoring the curious stares. As the train pulled away, Harry felt a strange mix of excitement and loss. For the first time in his life, he was truly on his own, without the protective walls of Gringotts or the watchful eyes of his goblin guardians. The compartment door slid open, interrupting his thoughts. A gangly red-headed boy peered in hesitantly. "Mind if I sit here? Everywhere else is full." Harry gestured to the empty seat across from him. "It's available." The boy dragged his trunk in and collapsed onto the seat with visible relief. "I'm Ron. Ron Weasley." "Harry." Ron's eyes widened slightly. "Not Harry Potter?" Harry nodded, bracing for the reaction he'd encountered repeatedly in Diagon Alley. "Blimey," Ron breathed. "Do you really have the, you know?" He pointed vaguely at his forehead. With a sigh, Harry lifted his fringe to reveal the lightning bolt scar. "Wicked," Ron said. Then, surprising Harry, he added, "Is it true you were raised by goblins?" "My brother Bill works as a cursebreaker for Gringotts, and he said there were rumors." "Yes," Harry replied, studying Ron's reaction carefully. "I've lived at Gringotts since I was a year old." Instead of disgust or horror, Ron's face lit up with genuine curiosity. "That must have been brilliant. What was it like? Can you speak gobbledygook?" "My brother says hardly any wizards can learn it properly." The barrage of excited questions caught Harry off guard. He'd expected revulsion or at least wariness, not enthusiastic interest. "It was home," Harry said cautiously. "And yes, I speak gobbledygook fluently." "Brilliant," Ron repeated. "Dad's mad about learning how different magical beings live. He works at the Ministry, Misuse of Muggle Artifacts office." Their conversation was interrupted when the compartment door slid open again. A round-faced boy looked in tearfully. "Sorry, but have you seen a toad? I've lost him." Before they could answer, a girl with bushy brown hair appeared behind him. "We're helping Neville find his toad, Trevor. Have you seen one?" Her eyes landed on Harry, narrowing with recognition. "You're Harry Potter." "Yes. I've read all about you," the girl continued rapidly. "You're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and, they got it wrong," Harry interrupted. "Those books claim I was hidden in the Muggle world under magical protection. I wasn't. I was raised by the Gringotts goblins." The girl's mouth formed a perfect O of surprise. "But that's not in any of the books." "Exactly my point." The girl recovered quickly. "Well, that's fascinating. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. No one in my family's magical at all. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter." She turned to Neville. "We should continue looking for your toad. You two should change into robes soon. I expect we'll be arriving shortly." After they left, Ron rolled his eyes. "Mental, that one." Harry shrugged. "She's curious. Nothing wrong with that." Among goblins, seeking knowledge was highly valued, though usually pursued with more strategic subtlety than Hermione Granger's direct approach. Their conversation shifted to Hogwarts houses, with Ron explaining his family's long history in Gryffindor. "Where do you think you'll end up?" Ron asked through a mouthful of chocolate frog, one of several treats they'd purchased from the trolley witch. Harry considered. "I'm not sure. Goblins value different traits than the Hogwarts founders did." "Like what?" "Honor. Skill. Cunning when necessary. Strength of purpose." Harry listed the core goblin values that had been instilled in him since childhood. "Protecting what's yours and respecting what belongs to others." Ron nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds a bit like a mix of Gryffindor and Slytherin, honestly." "Is that bad?" "Well." Ron looked uncomfortable. "Slytherin's got a bad reputation. There's not a witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. Harry frowned. That seems statistically improbable. Before Ron could respond, the compartment door slid open yet again. 3 boys entered, the pale, blond boy from Diagon Alley flanked by 2 larger boys with dull expressions. "They're saying Harry Potter's in this compartment," the blond boy said. "So it's you, is it?" "We've met," Harry replied coolly. "In Diagon Alley." "Draco Malfoy." Malfoy smirked, pleased to be remembered. "These are Crabbe and Goyle," he said, nodding to his companions. His eyes flicked to Ron. "No need to ask who you are. Red hair, hand-me-down robes, you must be a Weasley." Ron's face flushed, but Harry spoke before he could retort. "Among goblins, a person's worth is measured by their skill and honor, not their gold." Harry's voice carried the formal cadence he'd learned for Goblin Council meetings. An interesting difference in values. Malfoy's pale face colored slightly. "Yes, well, you'll soon find that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He extended his hand, but Harry didn't take it. "I judge people by their actions, not their family names," he said. "Goblin tradition." Malfoy's hand dropped, his expression souring. "You'd better be careful, Potter. If you keep acting like one of those creatures, you'll go the same way as your parents." They didn't know what was good for them, either. Harry stood in one fluid motion, his hand moving to where his dagger was concealed. He didn't draw it, but his stance shifted subtly to the fighting position Silverclaw had drilled into him for years. The movement was understated but unmistakably threatening. "I suggest you leave," Harry said quietly. "Now." Something in his eyes, perhaps the cold calculation that came from years of goblin combat training, made Malfoy step back. "We're going. But remember what I said, Potter. You'll see I'm right." After they left, Ron stared at Harry with newfound respect. "Blimey, that was brilliant. I thought you were going to curse him or something." "No need for magic when presence is enough," Harry replied, relaxing his stance. It was one of Silverclaw's favorite maxims. Ron grinned. "You know what? I don't care what house you end up in. You're all right, Harry." Hogwarts Castle loomed against the night sky as their small boats glided across the Black Lake. Harry took in the towering stone structure with professional interest. The goblin architect in him appreciated the defensive positioning, the strategic use of height and natural barriers. But the human part, the part that had only known underground chambers and tunnels for 10 years, felt a strange surge of emotion at the sight. Hagrid led the first years up to massive oak doors and handed them over to a stern-faced witch who introduced herself as Professor McGonagall. Her sharp eyes lingered on Harry for a moment longer than the others, a flicker of something, surprise, concern, crossing her features before she resumed her speech about houses and the sorting ceremony. As they waited in a small antechamber, whispers broke out among the students, many openly staring at Harry. News of his unusual upbringing had apparently spread through the train like fiendfire. "Is it true you can speak to goblins in their language? I heard he carries goblin weapons. My father says the goblins probably enchanted him." Harry ignored the murmurs, focusing instead on calming his racing heart. Goblins valued composure under pressure, he wouldn't disgrace his training now. When Professor McGonagall returned to lead them into the Great Hall, the chatter died instantly. For long tables filled with students watched as the first years filed in. Above them, thousands of candles floated beneath a ceiling bewitched to look like the night sky. Harry assessed the room with goblin-trained eyes, exit points, defensive positions, potential weapons if needed. Old habits. The Sorting Hat sang its song about the 4 houses, and then McGonagall began calling students forward alphabetically. Harry watched each sorting with interest, noting how quickly the hat decided for some students and how it deliberated over others. "Potter, Harry." The hall fell silent, then erupted in whispers as Harry stepped forward. He walked with the measured pace of a goblin of rank, back straight, movements controlled. As he sat on the stool and the hat dropped over his eyes, he heard the last of the whispers, "Did you see how he walks? Not like any wizard child I've ever," then silence as the hat's voice filled his mind. "Fascinating, most fascinating. I've sorted thousands of students, Mr. Potter, but never one raised by goblins. What a unique mind you have." Harry remained silent, waiting. Patience was a goblin virtue. "I see courage, certainly, goblin warriors value bravery highly, don't they? And intelligence, oh my yes. A thirst to prove yourself, to honor those who raised you. Loyalty to your goblin family, yet curiosity about your human heritage. Where to put you? Wherever I can best serve both worlds," Harry thought. Both worlds, is it? Ambitious. The goblins have taught you cunning and resourcefulness worthy of Slytherin, but there's something else, a desire to bridge understanding between different peoples. Better be Gryffindor. The last word was shouted to the hall. The Gryffindor table erupted in cheers, with the Weasley twins chanting, "We got Potter. We got Potter." Harry removed the hat and walked to the Gryffindor table, where Ron's brothers clapped him on the back as he sat down. Across the hall, he noticed Malfoy looking disappointed at the Slytherin table. "I knew you'd be with us," Ron said excitedly when he joined Harry after his own sorting. "Though you had me worried for a minute there, hat took ages with you." "We had a lot to discuss," Harry replied. The feast that followed was unlike anything Harry had experienced. Goblin meals were hearty but practical, focused on nutrients needed for working underground. This display of abundance and variety seemed almost wasteful to his goblin-trained sensibilities. As he carefully selected foods, the Gryffindor ghost, nearly headless Nick, floated over. "Welcome to Gryffindor, Mr. Potter. I must say, we're all curious about your unique upbringing." Harry met the ghost's transparent gaze directly. "I was raised by honorable people who took me in when the wizarding world left me on their doorstep." "Well said." Nick approved. "And refreshingly direct. The goblin's influence, I presume?" Before Harry could answer, an older student leaned forward eagerly. "Is it true you lived in the vaults beneath Gringotts? Bill Weasley told us goblins have entire cities down there that no wizard has ever seen." More questions followed, some respectful, others bordering on offensive. Harry answered politely but briefly, unwilling to betray goblin secrets or satisfy wizard curiosity for its own sake. From the staff table, he felt eyes watching him. Looking up, he met the gaze of the headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, whose blue eyes twinkled with what seemed like amused interest. Beside him sat a hook-nosed professor in black who stared at Harry with an intensity that made his scar prickle uncomfortably. "That's Professor Snape," Percy Weasley informed him, following his gaze. "Potions master and head of Slytherin House. Not particularly fond of Gryffindors." "He doesn't look fond of anyone," Harry observed. After dessert, Dumbledore rose for announcements, standard rules about forbidden items and out-of-bounds areas, with a specific warning about the third-floor corridor, to those who do not wish to die a very painful death. Harry's goblin-honed sense for valuable secrets immediately perked up at that. Goblins never announced the location of something dangerous unless they wanted certain people to know exactly where to look. Was Dumbledore warning students away, or subtly directing attention? As they followed Percy to Gryffindor Tower, Harry filed the information away for later consideration. His first priority was establishing his place in this new territory. The Gryffindor common room, warm and circular with squashy armchairs, felt foreign after the cool stone chambers of Gringotts. Harry climbed to his dormitory, finding his trunk already placed beside a four-poster bed hung with deep red curtains. As his dorm mates, Ron, Neville, Dean, and Seamus, unpacked and chatted excitedly, Harry quietly arranged his few possessions. Alongside his textbooks and school supplies, he set up a small silver stand for Hedwig, who would normally reside in the Ollery, carefully positioned his concealed metalworking tools, and placed a goblin-crafted protection charm beneath his pillow. "What's that?" Seamus asked, noticing the intricate silver disc. A ward stone, Harry explained. Standard goblin protection for sleeping quarters. Does it work? Dean asked skeptically. Better than most wizard wards, Harry replied matter-of-factly. Different magical principles. Before anyone could question him further, Harry changed into pajamas and drew his bed curtains. Taking out parchment and quill, he began writing a letter to Silverclaw, describing his journey and sorting in careful detail. This wasn't merely correspondence, it was his first intelligence report back to Gringotts, as he'd been trained to provide. He ended with a formal goblin closing, "May your gold multiply and your enemies tremble." Harry, of the Silverclaw line. Harry's first week at Hogwarts was a crash course in navigating his dual identity. By day, he attended classes alongside his fellow first-years, learning the wizard approach to magic, all wand movements and Latin incantations, so different from the silent, wandless concentration of goblin magic. By night, he practiced the goblin techniques Silverclaw had taught him, determined not to lose those skills. Finding his way through the castle proved easier than expected. Years of navigating Gringotts' labyrinthine tunnels had given Harry an excellent sense of direction, and his goblin training had taught him to mentally map new territories. While other first-years got lost regularly, Harry moved with confidence. Classes themselves presented a mixed challenge. In charms, Professor Flitwick, who, Harry learned, had a goblin ancestor himself, was visibly delighted when Harry correctly pronounced the goblin etymology of several charm incantations. 5 points to Gryffindor for linguistic knowledge, the tiny professor squeaked. It's so rare to find students interested in magical language origins. Transfiguration revealed an unexpected talent. Professor McGonagall's demonstration of turning her desk into a pig and back impressed the class, but when they began practicing turning matches into needles, Harry approached the task differently than his classmates. Instead of forcing the change through pure magic as instructed, he incorporated goblin metallurgy principles, understanding the properties of wood versus metal, visualizing the atomic restructuring rather than simply imposing a new form. By the end of class, his needle was perfect, earning a rare smile from McGonagall. "You have your mother's gift for transfiguration, Mr. Potter," she told him. "Though your technique is unconventional." Less successful was History of Magic, where the ghost Professor Binns droned on about goblin rebellions with such blatant wizard bias that Harry had to bite his tongue to keep from interrupting. After class, Hermione Granger cornered him in the corridor. "You looked ready to hex Binns today," she observed shrewdly. When he was talking about the rebellion of 1612. Harry sighed. He got it all wrong. The unprovoked attack he described was actually in response to wizard theft of goblin-crafted artifacts. Goblin metalwork is considered part of the maker's soul, taking it is like stealing part of someone's magic. Hermione's eyes widened. "That's not in our textbook at all." "Of course not. History written by the victors, remember." From that moment, Hermione became a frequent shadow, peppering Harry with questions about goblin culture, magic, and history. While exhausting, her genuine interest and respectful approach were refreshing compared to the morbid curiosity or outright disdain many other students showed. Defense against the dark arts proved disappointing. Professor Quirrell, with his stuttering delivery and garlic-reeking turban, seemed afraid of his own subject. When Harry raised his hand to ask about goblin defensive magic, Quirrell nearly fell off his chair and quickly changed the topic. But it was potions that presented the greatest challenge. As the Gryffindors filed into the dungeon classroom alongside the Slytherins, Harry felt Professor Snape's dark eyes follow him with undisguised antipathy. "Ah, yes," Snape said softly during roll call. "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." Malfoy and his friends sniggered behind their hands. Harry remained expressionless, employing the goblin negotiation tactic of revealing nothing. "Tell me, Potter," Snape continued, "what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Hermione's hand shot into the air, but Harry didn't hesitate. Among goblins, potions and metallurgy were closely related crafts. A sleeping potion so powerful it's called the draught of living death, sir. Snape's eyes narrowed. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? In the stomach of a goat, sir. It will save you from most poisons. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? They're the same plant, sir. Also called aconite. A tense silence followed. Snape's lip curled. Correct. It seems fame isn't everything. His tone suggested he'd expected, perhaps hoped for, failure. Tell me, Potter, how does a boy raised by bank tellers come to know such things? The deliberate insult to goblins made Harry's fingers twitch toward his concealed dagger, a reflex he quickly suppressed. Goblins are master potioneers, Professor, he replied evenly. Their understanding of material properties is essential for both metalwork and brewing. I was fortunate to learn from them. Something flickered in Snape's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or reluctant reassessment. 1 point to Gryffindor for correct answers, he said grudgingly. Don't expect special treatment, Potter. The class proceeded with Snape prowling between tables, criticizing everyone except Malfoy. When Neville melted Seamus's cauldron, creating a toxic mess, Harry reacted instinctively, pulling Neville away from the spreading potion and neutralizing it with a pinch of limestone powder from his personal potions kit, a standard goblin safety measure. Snape vanished the remains of the potion with a wave of his wand. Foolish boy, he snarled at Neville. I suppose you added the porcupine quills before taking the cauldron off the fire? Neville whimpered, boils erupting on his nose. Snape rounded on Harry. And you, Potter? Playing the hero? Where did you get that neutralizing agent? It's not on the standard supply list. Goblin Basic Safety Protocol, sir, Harry answered. Never brew without neutralizers nearby. For a moment, Snape seemed torn between taking points for unauthorized materials and acknowledging sound brewing practice. Take Longbottom to the hospital wing, he finally snapped. The rest of you, continue. Later, as Harry and Ron climbed the steps from the dungeon, Ron shook his head in amazement. That was incredible. No one stands up to Snape like that. I didn't stand up to him, Harry corrected. I answered his questions respectfully and followed safety procedures. Basic goblin apprentice behavior. Well, it looked like standing up to him from where I was sitting, Ron insisted. And that bit with the limestone powder, brilliant. You've got to teach me that. Harry hesitated, then nodded. Sharing basic safety knowledge wasn't betraying goblin secrets, and might prevent future accidents. I'll show you my kit after lunch. The following week brought flying lessons, which Harry anticipated with mixed feelings. Brooms weren't used in the goblin tunnels for obvious reasons, but he'd read enough to understand the basic principles. Nervous? Ron asked as they headed to the training grounds. Curious, Harry corrected. Flying seems inefficient compared to other magical transportation. Inefficient? It's brilliant. Ron looked scandalized. Wait till you try it. The Gryffindors shared the lesson with Slytherins, which guaranteed tension. Madam Hooch, a hawk-eyed witch with short grey hair, instructed them to stand beside their brooms and command, up. Harry's broom jumped into his hand immediately, one of the few that did. He examined it critically, the balance was poor, the twigs uneven. A goblin would never tolerate such shoddy craftsmanship. Now, when I blow my whistle, kick off from the ground, rise a few feet, then come straight back down, Madam Hooch instructed. Before she could blow her whistle, Neville, nervous and jumpy, pushed off too early. His broom rose rapidly, then went out of control, sending him crashing to the ground with a sickening crack. After Madam Hooch left to take Neville to the hospital wing, warning everyone to stay grounded, Malfoy spotted something in the grass. Look! It's that stupid thing Longbottom's Gran sent him. He held up a small glass ball, a remembrall. Give that here, Malfoy, Harry said quietly. I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find, how about up a tree? Malfoy mounted his broom and took off. Without hesitation, Harry grabbed his own broom. Hermione tried to stop him, warning about rules and points, but Harry wasn't listening. Among goblins, theft was unforgivable, and defending others' property was honorable. He kicked off, soaring upward with unexpected ease. The sensation was nothing like he'd imagined, not inefficient at all, but liberating. For the first time, Harry understood why wizards loved flying. Hovering level with Malfoy, he called, "Give it back, or I'll knock you off that broom." "Oh yeah?" Malfoy sneered, though he looked uneasy. Something in Harry's expression, the cold calculation of a goblin warrior sizing up an opponent, made him hesitate. "No Crabbe and Goyle up here to save you," Harry observed. "Just skill against skill." Malfoy's face flushed. "Catch it if you can, then." He threw the Remembrall high into the air and streaked back toward the ground. Harry assessed the ball's trajectory with the precision he'd learned from goblin gem-cutting lessons. He leaned forward, gathering speed, and dove after the ball. Wind whistled past his ears as he stretched out his hand, calculating angle, velocity, timing with mathematical precision rather than mere instinct. His fingers closed around the Remembrall a foot from the ground. He pulled up his broom sharply, transferring momentum into a graceful arc that brought him back to earth with the glass ball held triumphantly aloft. Harry Potter. Professor McGonagall was running toward them, face tight with shock. Never, in all my time at Hogwarts, Harry stood straight, prepared to accept consequences with goblin dignity. Property had been defended, honor had been satisfied. Punishment was irrelevant. To his surprise, McGonagall didn't punish him. Instead, she introduced him to Oliver Wood, captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. "I've found you a seeker, Wood," she said excitedly. He caught that thing in his hand after a 50-foot dive. Charlie Weasley couldn't have done it. Wood circled Harry, examining him with professional interest. "Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter?" "Only in books," Harry admitted. "He's a natural," McGonagall continued. "Was that your first time on a broomstick, Potter?" Harry nodded. "Gringotts tunnels aren't conducive to flying, Professor." McGonagall actually smiled. "Your father would have been proud. He was an excellent Quidditch player himself." The information about his father caught Harry off guard. The goblins had told him what they knew of his parents, but details about James Potter's Quidditch talents hadn't been part of their intelligence. That evening, as news of his Quidditch appointment spread through Gryffindor Tower, Harry wrote another letter to Silverclaw, detailing his experiences and this unexpected development. The goblin would be surprised. Sporting activities were considered frivolous unless they developed combat skills, but Harry found himself genuinely excited about the opportunity to connect with his father's legacy. "You must be the youngest house player in about a century," Ron told him over dinner. "Fred and George are on the team too, beaters." "This calls for celebration," Fred, or was it George, declared, sliding onto the bench beside Harry. "Our little goblin-raised friend, a Quidditch star in the making." Harry's pleasure dimmed slightly at the reminder of his outsider status, but before he could respond, Malfoy appeared, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. "Enjoying your last meal, Potter? When are you getting the train back to the goblins?" "You're a lot braver now you're back on the ground with your bodyguards," Harry observed coolly. "I'd take you on any time," Malfoy snapped. "Tonight, if you want." "Wizard's duel. Wands only, no contact." He smirked. "What's the matter? Never heard of a wizard's duel before, I suppose?" Before Harry could answer, Ron jumped in. "Of course he has. I'm his second." "Who's yours?" "Crabbe," Malfoy decided. "Midnight in the trophy room. That's always unlocked." After Malfoy left, Harry turned to Ron. "What exactly did you just commit me to?" Ron explained the concept of wizard duels in seconds, looking slightly embarrassed. "But don't worry, people only die in proper duels with real wizards. The most you and Malfoy'll be able to do is shoot sparks at each other. I'm not concerned about losing, Harry said. I'm concerned about the strategic wisdom of accepting a challenge on enemy terms. Ron blinked. What do you mean? In Goblin combat training, we learn to choose the battlefield, not let opponents dictate terms. Harry frowned thoughtfully. Malfoy chose the time and place too easily. It feels like a trap. You think he'll cheat? Ron asked. I think he might not show up at all. What if he tips off Filch instead? Harry's goblin-trained paranoia was in full swing now. We need contingency plans. That night, despite Hermione's attempts to stop them, Harry and Ron left Gryffindor Tower for the trophy room. Harry moved with the silent precision taught by Silverclaw, keeping to shadows and checking corners. His caution proved justified when they heard Filch's voice in the trophy room before they entered. Sniff around, my sweet. They're in here somewhere. Trap, Harry mouthed to Ron, who looked horrified. They retreated silently, collecting Neville, who'd been sleeping outside the portrait hole after forgetting the password, along the way. Their escape route led them unwittingly to the forbidden third-floor corridor, where they barely avoided Mrs. Norris by ducking through a locked door, unlocked by Hermione's Alohomora charm, as she'd reluctantly joined their flight. What they found inside stopped them cold. A massive three-headed dog stood guard over a trapdoor, all 6 eyes focusing on the intruders as 3 sets of jaws began to growl. They fled back to Gryffindor Tower, gasping for breath after their narrow escape. What are they doing, keeping a thing like that in a school? Ron demanded once they were safely inside the common room. Didn't you see what it was standing on? Hermione asked. The floor. Ron suggested. I wasn't looking at its feet. I was too busy with its heads. It was standing on a trapdoor, Harry confirmed, having noticed it immediately. Goblin security systems often employed similar mechanisms, dangerous guardians protecting access points. It's obviously guarding something, Hermione said. Harry nodded thoughtfully. The question is what? And why announce its presence by declaring the corridor forbidden? That only attracts attention. That's exactly what I was thinking. Hermione exclaimed. It's either the most careless security system ever, or someone wants certain people to know exactly where to look, Harry finished her thought. Ron looked between them, bewildered. You're mental, both of you. That dog's not security, it's a nightmare. And I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed, or worse, expelled. As they climbed the stairs to their dormitory, Harry's mind raced. The 3-headed dog, the trapdoor, the forbidden corridor announcement, it all pointed to a deliberate setup. In Gringotts, such obvious security would be a test or a trap. But what was Dumbledore playing at? The weeks leading up to Halloween passed in a blur of classes, Quidditch practice, and quiet observation. Harry wrote regularly to Silverclaw, practiced his goblin magic in private, and slowly built relationships with his fellow Gryffindors. Would prove to be a demanding captain, drilling Harry relentlessly on seeker techniques. To everyone's surprise, Harry took to Quidditch naturally, his goblin-trained reflexes and mathematical approach to flight making him a formidable player despite his lack of experience. It's like you calculate where the snitch will be, not just chase it, Wood marveled after one particularly impressive catch. Harry shrugged. Goblin gem cutters predict how stones will fall when cut. Similar principle. The teachers continued to react variously to Harry's unconventional approaches. Flitwick delighted in his alternative casting methods, McGonagall watched his transfiguration work with scholarly interest, and Snape maintained a cold neutrality that was better than his treatment of most Gryffindors. Only Quirrell seemed consistently uncomfortable around Harry, stuttering more severely whenever Harry asked questions and avoiding eye contact. After several such encounters, Harry's goblin-honed instinct for detecting deception flared. Something about the defense professor didn't add up. Meanwhile, Harry's friendship with Ron solidified through shared experiences and mutual respect. Though they came from vastly different backgrounds, both boys appreciated straightforwardness and loyalty. Ron's strategic mind, showcased in Wizard's chess, impressed Harry's goblin sensibilities. His relationship with Hermione remained more complicated. Her intelligence and thirst for knowledge earned his respect, but her rigid adherence to rules and authority sometimes clashed with his goblin-influenced perspective. When Ron insulted her after a particularly frustrating charms lesson, leading her to spend the afternoon crying in the girls' bathroom, Harry found himself torn between loyalty to his friend and concern for a classmate. These thoughts occupied him during the Halloween feast that evening. The Great Hall had been decorated with floating jack-o'-lanterns and live bats, with golden plates suddenly filled with elaborate sweets and savory dishes. Among goblins, Samhain was a solemn occasion, a night to honor ancestors and reinforce clan bonds. This gaudy wizard celebration felt hollow in comparison. Moreover, Harry was uncomfortably aware that Halloween marked the anniversary of his parents' murders and his delivery to Gringotts. His melancholy reflections were interrupted when Professor Quirrell burst into the hall, turban askew and terror on his face. "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He collapsed in a dead faint. Chaos erupted until Dumbledore shot purple firecrackers from his wand and ordered prefects to lead students back to dormitories. As they filed out, Harry grabbed Ron's arm. "Hermione, she doesn't know about the troll." Ron's face paled with guilt. "Oh no." They slipped away from the Gryffindor line, heading toward the girls' bathroom. Turning a corner, they spotted the troll, 12 feet tall with granite-gray skin and a tiny head, shambling not toward the dungeons but into a doorway. "The key's in the lock," Harry whispered. "We could lock it in." They crept forward and Ron turned the key with a triumphant click. Their victory was short-lived, however, as a high-pitched scream came from inside the room. "That's the girls' bathroom," Harry realized with horror. They rushed back, unlocked the door, and burst inside to find Hermione shrinking against the wall, the troll advancing on her with a massive wooden club raised. "Confuse it!" Harry yelled, seizing a tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll stopped, blinking stupidly, then turned toward Harry. Ron threw a metal pipe, hitting its shoulder. The troll roared and started toward Ron instead, giving Harry an opening. Rather than using his wand, Harry reached for his concealed dagger, a reflex born from years of goblin combat training. With a warrior's cry in gobbledygook, he launched himself onto the troll's back, driving the silver blade into the creature's shoulder. The troll howled, spinning wildly to dislodge him. Harry clung on, remembering Silverclaw's lessons on fighting larger opponents: use their size against them, target weak points, maintain position advantage. "Ron! The club!" Harry shouted as the troll flailed its weapon, nearly crushing Hermione. Ron pulled out his wand. Wingardium Leviosa. The club flew from the troll's hand, rose high into the air, and dropped with a sickening crack onto its owner's head. The troll swayed, then collapsed face first with Harry still on its back. He rolled clear, retrieving his dagger in one smooth motion and wiping it clean before resheathing it. "Is it dead?" Hermione asked shakily, emerging from her corner. "Just knocked out, I think," Harry replied, assessing the creature with professional detachment. "Though my dagger may have hit a nerve cluster in its shoulder." Ron stared at the blade Harry was cleaning. "You actually stabbed it? With a real dagger? Where did you even get that?" Before Harry could answer, Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell burst into the bathroom. McGonagall's lips went white at the sight of the unconscious troll and the 3 first years. "What on earth were you thinking?" she demanded. "You're lucky you weren't killed." To everyone's surprise, Hermione spoke up. "Please, Professor, they were looking for me. I went after the troll because I thought I could handle it. If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now." While McGonagall lectured Hermione and awarded points to Harry and Ron for sheer dumb luck, Harry noticed Snape's gaze fixed on his right hand, specifically, the goblin-crafted ring he wore that concealed his dagger sheath. The potions master's eyes narrowed knowingly before he looked away. Later, back in Gryffindor Tower, Harry wrote a detailed account of the incident to Silverclaw. He described the troll's weaknesses, the effectiveness of goblin combat techniques against such creatures, and his concerns about Quirrell's behavior. How had a troll entered Hogwarts without triggering wards? Why had the defense professor fainted instead of handling the situation himself? At the bottom, he added, I believe Professor Snape knows about my dagger. Should I be concerned? Sealing the letter, Harry reflected on the evening's events. From that moment in the bathroom, 3 things had changed. Hermione Granger had become their friend, cemented by the kind of bond that forms only through facing danger together. Harry had revealed more of his goblin training than he'd intended, and he'd begun to suspect that the troll's entrance was no accident. Someone at Hogwarts was orchestrating events, and Harry was determined to find out who, and why. November brought bitter cold to the Scottish Highlands and the first Quidditch match of the season, Gryffindor vs Slytherin. As Harry prepared for his debut, a package arrived at breakfast, a brand new Nimbus 2000 broomstick. From Professor McGonagall, Hermione read from the attached note. Though how you're allowed a broom as a first year when the rules clearly state, special circumstances, Harry interrupted, examining the broom with a craftsman's eye. Unlike the school brooms, this one showed superb workmanship, balanced, streamlined, perfectly symmetrical. News of Harry's position as Seeker had spread through the school, generating mixed reactions. Some students were impressed, others skeptical that a boy raised underground could master flying so quickly. Several Slytherins made pointed comments about goblins bewitching the broom or Harry using dark magic taught by creatures. The morning of the match, Harry sat at breakfast unable to eat, reviewing Wood's strategy instructions in his mind. Hermione and Ron offered encouragement, but it was a quiet comment from Neville that steadied him. You know, Neville said hesitantly, my gran always says goblins never start fights they haven't already calculated how to win. So, I reckon you've got this sorted. Harry nodded gratefully. Neville's assessment aligned perfectly with Goblin battle philosophy, never enter conflict without understanding all variables and establishing multiple paths to victory. In the locker room, Wood gave his final instructions, ending with, we've got the best Seeker. Harry, just catch that snitch before Higgs does, and we've won. Goblins don't believe in pressure, Harry replied with a slight smile, repeating one of Silverclaw's favorite sayings. Only in preparation and execution. As they walked onto the pitch amid roaring crowds, Harry focused on calming his mind through goblin meditation techniques. The sheer noise and spectacle of wizard sporting events still overwhelmed him sometimes, but he couldn't afford distraction today. Madame Hooch released the balls, and 15 brooms rose into the air. Harry soared higher than the others, scanning for the snitch as Wood had instructed. Below, the quaffle changed hands rapidly while bludgers rocketed around the pitch like dangerous projectiles. And the quaffle is taken immediately by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor, Lee Jordan's commentary boomed across the stadium. What an excellent chaser that girl is, and rather attractive too, Jordan. Sorry, Professor. Harry tuned out the commentary, focusing entirely on his search. He executed a series of calculated flight patterns, methodically covering sections of the pitch while maintaining optimal viewing angles. A flash of gold caught his eye near the Slytherin goal posts. Harry accelerated smoothly, applying the principles of momentum and trajectory he'd learned from Goblin engineers. The Slytherin seeker, Terence Higgs, hadn't spotted it yet. Suddenly, Harry's broom gave a frightening lurch. Then another. It was trying to buck him off. Harry gripped the handle tightly, trying to regain control, but the broom wasn't responding to any input. It zigzagged through the air, making violent swishing movements that almost unseated him. No one else seemed to have noticed Harry's predicament. The broom was carrying him higher, away from the game, jerking and twisting as it went. This was no mechanical failure. The broom was being magically manipulated, a sophisticated attack requiring sustained eye contact and considerable power. Harry scanned the crowds, looking for anyone staring fixedly at him without blinking. There, in the teacher's stand. Quirrell and Snape sat side by side, both staring unblinkingly up at him, muttering continuously under their breath. One was cursing his broom, the other possibly attempting a counter-curse. Harry needed to break their concentration. Without his wand, without even the ability to move safely, he was limited in options. Then he remembered a technique Gornik had taught him for emergencies, goblin magic that required only focused intent and a drop of blood. Biting his lip hard enough to draw blood, Harry traced a simple rune pattern with his tongue, then whispered the goblin word for fire 3 times. A tiny flame sparked in the hem of his Quidditch robes, just enough to create a distraction without causing serious harm. Letting the growing heat reach his hand, Harry grimaced theatrically and slapped at his robes, creating a commotion that drew attention from nearby spectators. In the moment of confusion, he used a wandless extinguishing charm and felt his broom stabilize. Back in control, Harry dove toward the ground where he'd last seen the snitch. He'd lost track of it during the interference, but a glint of gold near the grass caught his eye. The Slytherin Seeker was closing in from the opposite direction. Harry flattened himself to his broomstick, pushing it to maximum speed. He and Higgs were neck and neck, both reaching for the snitch. With a move that combined goblin hand-eye precision with wizard flying instinct, Harry snatched the tiny golden ball from under Higgs's fingertips, pulling up mere inches from the ground. Gryffindor wins. Lee Jordan shouted as the stands erupted. After the match, Harry met Ron and Hermione in Hagrid's hut for tea. They reported what they'd seen from the stands. It was Snape, Ron insisted. Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing your broomstick, muttering, not taking his eyes off you. It wasn't just Snape, Hermione countered. Quirrell was doing exactly the same thing. I couldn't tell which one was cursing and which one might have been counter-cursing. Rubbish, said Hagrid. Why would either of them do something like that? Harry sipped his tea thoughtfully. Quirrell was at the 3rd-floor corridor on Halloween when everyone else was supposed to be dealing with the troll. Snape was limping afterward, like something had bitten him. Blimey, Harry, you're not still on about that? Hagrid looked uncomfortable. Forget that dog. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel, Nicholas Flamel. Harry repeated, the name triggering recognition from his goblin education. The alchemist? Hagrid looked furious with himself. I shouldn't have said that. Forget I said it. But Harry's mind was already racing. Nicholas Flamel was legendary among goblins for his work with precious metals and, more importantly, for creating the Philosopher's Stone, a mythical object that could transform base metals into gold and produce the elixir of life. If Flamel was involved, and the 3-headed dog was guarding something valuable enough to merit such protection, the conclusion was obvious. Later that evening, Harry shared his theory with Ron and Hermione in a quiet corner of the common room. The Philosopher's Stone? Hermione whispered excitedly. That would explain everything. No wonder someone's trying to steal it, eternal life and unlimited gold. Gold created by the stone isn't the same as natural gold, Harry corrected, drawing on his goblin metallurgical knowledge. Goblins can detect the difference immediately. But the elixir of life, that would tempt many wizards. So you think Quirrell or Snape is trying to steal it? Ron asked. And the other one is trying to protect it? Harry shook his head. I don't have enough information yet. But I intend to find out more. As Christmas approached, most students prepared to return home for the holidays. Harry had already arranged with Silverclaw to return to Gringotts for the traditional Goblin winter ceremonies. These celebrations, centered around metalworking and ancestral honors rather than gift-giving, held deep significance for Harry. The day before departure, Hermione cornered Harry in the library. Before you leave, I've been meaning to ask you something. She hesitated, then continued in a rush, that fire on your robes during the Quidditch match, that wasn't an accident, was it? You did something that wasn't wizard magic. Harry studied her perceptive face. What makes you say that? I've been researching. There's hardly anything in the library about goblin magic, just dismissive comments about creature magic being primitive. She wrinkled her nose in disgust. But I found one reference to goblins using blood in emergencies. You bit your lip during the match. Harry's respect for her intelligence increased. You're very observant, Hermione. Yes, I used a simple goblin technique to create a distraction. Would you teach me sometime? Her eyes shone with academic enthusiasm. Not the blood magic specifically, but about goblin magical theory. It must approach problems so differently from what we learn here. Some aspects I can share, Harry said carefully. Others are goblin secrets I'm bound to protect. But yes, I can teach you the basics when I return. Her face lit up. Brilliant. Oh, I've packed some light reading for the holidays. She gestured to a stack of enormous books. There might be more about Flamel in these. Harry smiled. I'll ask at Gringotts. Discreetly, of course. The journey back to London aboard the Hogwarts Express felt strange, a reverse culture shock as Harry prepared to transition from wizard student back to goblin ward. He sat with Ron, Hermione, and Neville, playing exploding Snap and sharing chocolate frogs while the Scottish countryside rolled past. Will you miss Hogwarts during the break? Hermione asked. Harry considered. Parts of it. I miss Gringotts when I'm at Hogwarts too. It's complicated having two homes. Two very different homes, Ron added. Bet the goblins don't have Christmas trees and fairy lights. No, Harry agreed. They have the forge lighting ceremony, where the ancestral fires are stoked with precious metals to honor fallen warriors. And the night of accounts, when debts and favors are formally settled before the new year. Sounds intense, Neville commented. Harry smiled slightly. It's home. At King's Cross, Silverclaw waited on platform 9 3/4, looking distinctly out of place among the wizard parents in his formal goblin attire. Several families gave him a wide berth, whispering behind their hands. Harry approached with pride rather than embarrassment, greeting his guardian with the formal goblin salute of respect. Honored guardian, I return as promised. Silverclaw returned the salute, then surprised Harry by briefly clasping his shoulder, a rare display of affection. You've been missed, young one. His sharp eyes assessed Harry critically. You look thinner. The wizard food not agreeing with you? It's too rich, Harry admitted. Too many sweets, not enough iron. Silverclaw nodded approvingly at Harry's goblin dietary sensibilities. That will be remedied at home. After brief introductions to Ron and Hermione, who managed to hide their nervousness admirably, Harry followed Silverclaw toward the portal back to the Muggle station. How has Hogwarts treated you? Silverclaw asked as they walked. Better than expected in some ways, worse in others, Harry replied honestly. The magic they teach is inefficient but interesting. And I've made allies. Friends, Silverclaw corrected gently. Humans call them friends, not allies. Remember your cultural translations. Harry nodded, accepting the correction. There's much to tell you. Some things better discussed in private. Silverclaw's eyes narrowed with interest. Ragnarok will want a full report. There have been developments at the bank as well. They traveled back to Gringotts via a special goblin transportation network connected to a nondescript office building in London. Unlike the Fleur network or apparition, Goblin Transit used a system of enchanted metal rails that carried passengers at incredible speeds through magically excavated tunnels deep beneath the city. As they descended into the familiar depths of Gringotts, Harry felt tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying melt away. The cool stone corridors, the distant sound of hammers on metal, the efficient movements of goblin workers, it was home in a way Hogwarts, for all its wonders, was not. Nagrek was waiting in the main hall, trying to look nonchalant and failing miserably. When he spotted Harry, he scowled, but there was no real malice in it anymore. So the great wizard returns to grace us with his presence, he said in gobbledygook. The wizard returns to remind his brother how to properly handle a dagger, Harry replied in the same language, grinning. They clasped forearms in the traditional goblin greeting between equals, a significant change from their previous relationship. You've grown, Negrek observed with disgust. Humans and their constant size changes. It's very inconvenient, Harry agreed solemnly. My robes needed adjustment twice already. As they walked deeper into the bank, Negrek updated Harry on developments, which goblin had been promoted, which demoted, the latest security enhancements, and most importantly, gossip about Harry's letters. Ragnarok called a full council meeting after your report on the three-headed dog, Negrek revealed. There's something big happening, but they won't tell apprentice-level goblins. Harry's interest piqued. Related to Nicholas Flamel? Negrek's eyes widened. How did you? Never mind. Yes, Flamel's name was mentioned. He's an old client. Very old. They arrived at Harry's chamber, preserved exactly as he'd left it in September. Harry set down his trunk and Hedwig's empty cage, she was flying to Gringotts separately, and took a deep breath of the familiar stone and metal-scented air. There will be a formal welcome feast tonight, Silverclaw informed him. Rest and prepare. Ragnarok expects you to address the council afterward. After Silverclaw and Negrek left, Harry unpacked his few belongings, carefully setting his wand in a specialized holder he'd crafted before leaving for Hogwarts. Unlike wizards who treated their wands casually, Harry approached his with the same reverence goblins showed their tools, placing it with precision, acknowledging its power. An hour later, bathed and dressed in formal goblin attire modified for his human frame, Harry made his way to the Great Forge, Gringotts ceremonial hall where important rituals and gatherings took place. The massive chamber, with its ancient anvil at the center and stepped seating carved from the living rock, could accommodate hundreds of goblins. Tonight, it was nearly full. Harry's return had coincided with the beginning of winter ceremonies, bringing goblins from various departments together. He felt hundreds of eyes on him as he entered, some curious, some proud, some still suspicious of the human child in their midst. Ragnarok stood on the central platform beside the anvil, imposing in ceremonial armor that gleamed in the forge firelight. He raised a hand for silence, then spoke in the formal cadence reserved for rituals. We gather to welcome the return of Harry of the Silverclaw line, Ward of Gringotts, who has walked among wizards while carrying goblin honor. The traditional response rumbled through the hall, may his gold multiply and his enemies tremble. Harry approached the anvil and knelt on one knee, head bowed in respect. Ragnarok lifted a silver hammer and struck the anvil once, the clear ring echoing through the chamber. Rise, young one, and rejoin your people. Harry stood and moved to Silverclaw's side at the high table. The feast that followed featured traditional goblin cuisine, rich in minerals and metals, with complex flavors that human palates rarely appreciated. Harry savored every bite, realizing how much he'd missed these tastes. During the meal, he caught up with his goblin mentors, Gornik from the Forges, Blacktooth from the Archives, and others who'd taught him over the years. Many asked subtle questions about Hogwarts, carefully phrased to avoid seeming too interested in wizard affairs while clearly fishing for intelligence. After the feast, the younger goblins were dismissed while Harry followed Ragnarok, Silverclaw, and the senior council members to a secure chamber for his debriefing. There, he provided a detailed account of everything he'd observed at Hogwarts, from teaching methods to security systems, from the three-headed dog to his suspicions about Quirrell and Snape. And you believe the dog is guarding the Philosopher's Stone? Griphook asked when Harry finished. It fits the evidence, Harry replied. Flamel's involvement, the high security measures, the attempts to access it. Ragnarok exchanged significant looks with several elder goblins. Flamel is indeed a special client of Gringotts. The stone has been removed from his vault for the first time in centuries. At Dumbledore's request, added Bogrod, a senior security goblin. Harry absorbed this confirmation. So I'm right. But why move it to Hogwarts? And why make its location so obvious with the Forbidden Corridor announcement? Perhaps Dumbledore wants it to be found, suggested Silverclaw. A trap for someone specific. Or a test, Harry mused. For students. For me. Ragnarok leaned forward. What matters to the Goblin Nation is not why Dumbledore plays his games, but how they affect our interests. The Philosopher's Stone represents significant financial power. If it were to fall into certain hands, it would destabilize gold markets, Harry completed the thought. His goblin economic education had been thorough. Precisely. Ragnarok's expression grew calculating. We placed you at Hogwarts partly to learn wizard ways, but also to have our representative where important events unfold. It seems that decision was more prescient than we realized. Harry felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What would you have me do? Watch. Learn. Report. Ragnarok's sharp teeth gleamed in the lamplight. If someone is indeed attempting to steal the stone, that threatens goblin interests. We would consider it valuable information if you could identify the culprit. The meeting continued late into the night, with Harry answering dozens of specific questions about Hogwarts defenses, staff behaviors, and student movements. By the time he returned to his chamber, his mind was buzzing with implications. The next morning, Nagrek burst in without knocking. Time for training. Your wizard muscles have probably gone soft. Harry groaned but rolled out of bed. Physical training had been part of his daily routine before Hogwarts, and he had indeed neglected it somewhat at school. Within minutes, he was following Nagrek down to the training caverns, where Silverclaw waited with practice weapons. Begin with standard forms, Silverclaw instructed. Let's see what you remember. For the next 2 hours, Harry moved through the complex patterns of goblin combat training, parries, thrusts, defensive stances, and attack combinations. His muscles protested after months without this specific exercise, but the movements came back quickly. Your form is sloppy, Silverclaw critiqued. But your reactions remain sharp. The troll incident helped with that, Harry admitted, describing in greater detail how he'd applied goblin fighting techniques against the mountain troll. Silverclaw nodded with grudging approval. Targeting nerve clusters was clever. Now, show me how you'd counter a wizard's wand attack. They spent another hour practicing anti-wizard defenses, tactics goblins had developed during various rebellions to neutralize wand advantages. Speed, unpredictable movement patterns, and closing distance quickly were key. After training, Harry visited the forges, where Gornik set him to work immediately on a challenging silverworking project. The familiar rhythm of hammer on metal, the focus required to shape enchanted silver, felt like coming home to a part of himself he'd neglected at Hogwarts. Your touch hasn't completely deteriorated, Gornik observed, examining Harry's work. But you need practice. Wand waving makes fingers lazy. The days settled into a comfortable pattern, training with Silverclaw in the mornings, metalwork with Gornik in the afternoons, and evenings spent either in the archives researching Flammel and the Philosopher's Stone or with Nagrek, exploring new sections of Gringotts' vast underground complex. On the third day, Silverclaw brought Harry to a chamber he'd never entered before, a small, circular room with walls covered in ancient goblin runes and a pedestal in the center holding a shallow stone basin. It's time you learned more about your parents, Silverclaw said quietly. From the goblin perspective. What is this place? Harry asked, examining the runes with interest. The memory chamber. Similar to wizard pensieves, but with goblin improvements. Silverclaw removed a small crystal vial from his pocket and poured its silvery contents into the basin. The liquid, if it was liquid, swirled with strange patterns, unlike anything Harry had seen before. These are my memories of your parents' interactions with Gringotts, Silverclaw explained. As security chief, I observed all high-profile clients. James and Lily Potter were unusual in their respect for goblin customs. Harry's heart raced. The goblins had told him about his parents before, of course, but never had he been offered actual memories. Touch the surface, Silverclaw instructed. The memory will welcome you. Harry reached out, his fingers brushing the silvery substance. Immediately, the room dissolved around him, reforming into a familiar sight, Gringotts' main hall, though slightly different from the one he knew, with older styling and different goblin tellers. A young couple approached the high counter, a tall man with untidy black hair and glasses, and a beautiful woman with startlingly familiar green eyes. James and Lily Potter, looking barely older than 20. Unlike most wizards, who treated goblins with barely concealed disdain or nervous fear, James Potter addressed the teller with a respectful nod and spoke in careful, if accented, gobbledygook. "May your gold flow and your enemies fall," he said, the formal greeting that few wizards bothered to learn. The teller's eyebrows rose slightly, the goblin equivalent of shock. "We'd like to access the Potter Vault," James continued in English. "And if possible, speak with someone about setting up a trust vault for our son." Harry watched, transfixed, as his parents were led to a private office. His mother moved with graceful confidence, her wand not displayed prominently like most wizards but tucked respectfully away. She carried a small bundle, a baby. Him. The scene shifted to the office, where a younger Silverclaw waited. "Mr. and Mrs. Potter," he greeted them formally. "I understand you wish to establish additional security measures." "Yes," Lily Potter said. "These are dangerous times. We want to ensure our son's financial security, regardless of what happens to us." What followed was a complex financial discussion that showcased both Potter's unusual understanding of goblin banking principles. James explained inheritance provisions while Lily added specific enchantment requests for the trust vault. At one point, baby Harry began fussing. Lily rocked him gently, murmuring soothing words. When a small toy fell to the floor, James reached for his wand, but Silverclaw was faster, retrieving the toy and offering it back with a formal gesture. Instead of simply taking it, Lily responded with the proper goblin acknowledgement of a favor, a slight bow and words in halting but correct gobbledygook, "The debt is noted and honored." Silverclaw's expression showed genuine surprise, which quickly masked itself in professional courtesy. The memory shifted again, showing several more meetings between the Potters and various Gringotts officials. In each, Harry's parents demonstrated unusual respect for goblin customs and a willingness to learn proper protocols, setting them apart from most wizard clients. The final memory showed James Potter alone, his face tense with worry. It was clearly shortly before his death. "If anything happens," he told Silverclaw, "there's a letter in our vault addressed to Harry. Make sure he gets it when he's old enough to understand." "Wizard affairs are not our concern," Silverclaw replied stiffly. James smiled wryly. "No, but proper fulfillment of client instructions is." "I'm not asking for charity, Master Silverclaw. I'm making a formal banking request, with appropriate compensation." He slid a small pouch across the desk, the clink of gold within unmistakable. Silverclaw nodded once. "The bank will honor its obligations to vault holders." The memory dissolved, and Harry found himself back in the circular chamber, tears streaming down his face. "They respected us," Silverclaw said quietly. "Few wizards do. Your father learned our customs because, as he once put it, anyone who guards my gold deserves my respect. Your mother studied goblin magic, theoretically, of course, as wizard law forbids sharing practical knowledge with humans." Harry wiped his eyes. "The letter he mentioned. Did it survive?" Silverclaw nodded. "It awaits you in the Potter Vault. Ragnarok felt you should see these memories first, to understand something of your parents' character from our perspective." "Thank you," Harry whispered. "This means more than I can express." The following day, Silverclaw escorted Harry to the Potter family vault, not his trust vault, which he'd visited before starting Hogwarts, but the main Potter vault deep beneath the bank. The journey by cart took nearly 15 minutes, descending to levels Harry had rarely visited. The vault door bore the Potter family crest, a design Harry had seen in books but never in person. Silverclaw handed him a golden key. "This vault has remained sealed since your parents' deaths. As their heir, You now have limited access rights, though full control only comes at maturity. Harry inserted the key with reverence. The door melted away, revealing a spacious chamber filled with more than just gold. While impressive piles of galleons occupied one section, the vault also contained furniture, trunks, bookshelves, and display cases holding what appeared to be family heirlooms. "Take as much time as you need," Silverclaw said. "I'll wait with the cart." Alone among his family's possessions, Harry moved slowly, examining everything with care. His goblin upbringing had instilled deep respect for ancestral artifacts. These weren't just objects but connections to his human lineage. He found the letter in a small rosewood box on a central table, sealed with the Potter crest in red wax. His name was written on the envelope in a strong, masculine hand, "For Harry, when he is ready." With trembling fingers, Harry broke the seal and unfolded the parchment inside. "My dear son, if you're reading this, your mother and I are gone, and you've grown enough to visit the family vault. I hope whoever raised you has brought you up well and taught you about your heritage, both magical and personal. There's so much I want to tell you, so much advice I wish I could give in person. Know that your mother and I loved you more than anything in this world, enough to do whatever necessary to protect you. The times we live in are dangerous. Voldemort threatens everything we value: equality, justice, freedom. We've opposed him as members of a group called the Order of the Phoenix, led by Albus Dumbledore. This opposition has put us in grave danger, which is why we've taken special precautions for your safety. In this vault, you'll find the Potter family legacy, not just gold, but knowledge, history, and items of power. The invisible cloak in the silver chest was my father's, and his father's before him. Use it well. The books on the east wall contain family grimoires and journals dating back centuries. The sealed trunk in the corner holds your mother's research. She was brilliant beyond measure, especially in charms and potions. I don't know what age you are as you read this, or what the world is like now. I hope Voldemort is long defeated and peace reigns. But if not, know that some fights are worth any cost, and that standing by your principles matters more than temporary safety. Whatever path you choose in life, know that we would be proud of you. Being a Potter isn't about blood purity or wealth, it's about courage, integrity, and using your advantages to help others. With all my love, your father, James P.S. Your mother insists I add that you should study hard, respect your teachers, and have fun. She says breaking some rules is acceptable if it's for a good cause. That's why I married her, brilliant and mischievous." Harry read the letter 3 times, each reading bringing fresh tears. Finally, he carefully refolded and placed it in an inside pocket, directly over his heart. Then he began exploring the vault with new purpose. He found the invisibility cloak exactly where the letter described, a flowing, silvery garment unlike any fabric he'd ever encountered. He located his mother's research trunk but decided to leave detailed examination for another visit. Instead, he selected a few books that caught his eye, including a Potter family history and a journal belonging to his grandfather. When he finally emerged from the vault, Silverclaw was waiting patiently. The goblin's eyes noted the cloak and books but made no comment about Harry's choices or his reddened eyes. The journey back up was spent in companionable silence, with Harry lost in thoughts of his newly discovered connection to his human family. The remaining days of the holiday passed quickly, filled with goblin winter ceremonies, training sessions, and research. Harry divided his time between reconnecting with his goblin home and exploring his human heritage through the books from the Potter Vault. He wrote to Ron and Hermione, sharing edited versions of his experiences and asking about their holidays. Hermione replied with excitement about her continued research into Flammel, while Ron's letter was full of stories about Christmas at the Burrow and wizard chess strategies. On his final evening before returning to Hogwarts, Harry sat with Silverclaw in his guardian's private quarters, sharing a traditional goblin meal of mineral-enriched stew and forge bread. "You've changed," Silverclaw observed. "Subtly, but noticeably. Hogwarts has influenced you." Harry nodded thoughtfully. "I see things differently now, both worlds. The strengths and flaws of each. That was always our intention, Silverclaw admitted. We raised you in goblin ways, but never expected you to be only goblin. You are wizard-born, with a destiny in that world as well as ours. The boy who lived, Harry said with a grimace. I still don't understand why Voldemort targeted my family or how I supposedly defeated him. Silverclaw's expression grew serious. There are theories among the goblin elders. Prophecies were recorded in the Hall of Records around the time of your birth. But such things are not to be shared lightly, even with you. More secrets, Harry sighed. Knowledge given before its time can be a burden rather than an advantage, Silverclaw countered. But know this, your path lies between worlds, not wholly in either. That unique perspective may prove more valuable than any spell or weapon. Harry considered this wisdom as he packed his trunk that night. Along with his Hogwarts supplies, he carefully stowed his invisibility cloak, selected books from the Potter vault, and the letter from his father. To these treasures, he added a new goblin-crafted dagger sheath, a gift from Gornik, and a set of specialized metalworking tools designed to work with his wand, from Ragnarok himself. His two worlds, packed side by side in a single trunk. Perhaps Silverclaw was right, his strength would come not from choosing between them, but from bridging them. The following morning, Harry bid farewell to his goblin family with mixed emotions. Excitement to return to Hogwarts mingled with reluctance to leave Gringotts. This time, however, the separation felt less absolute. He had established himself at Hogwarts while reinforcing his goblin connections. He could navigate both worlds. As Silverclaw escorted him to the designated departure point, the goblin offered a final piece of advice: remember that Hogwarts holds not only knowledge and friendship, but also danger. The Philosopher's Stone is a powerful temptation to many. Watch carefully, trust wisely. Harry nodded solemnly. I'll remain vigilant. And I'll write regularly. With a final formal salute, he stepped onto the goblin transportation platform and began his journey back to Hogwarts, carrying with him new understanding of both his past and his purpose. Chapter 3, Blood and Gold. Harry's return to Hogwarts after the winter holidays felt different. The castle's stone corridors no longer seemed alien after his time back in Gringotts' familiar depths. Instead, he moved between both worlds with growing confidence, a foot in each but belonging fully to neither. You look different, Hermione observed during their first breakfast back. More. I don't know. Centered. Harry smiled slightly. Good observation. I spent time in my family vault over break. Found some connections to my parents I didn't know existed. Wicked, Ron said through a mouthful of toast. Find anything cool? Ancient Potter treasures or legendary weapons? Harry's hand automatically went to his pocket, where his father's invisibility cloak remained carefully folded. He'd decided not to reveal this particular inheritance yet. Some books. Letters. Family history. And did you ask about, Hermione lowered her voice, Flammel? Didn't need to, Harry replied quietly. The name was already being discussed at Gringotts. He's an old client with special status. Hermione's eyes widened. So it is the Philosopher's Stone. Harry nodded once, then changed the subject as other students took seats nearby. How was your family's ski trip? As they headed to their first class of the term, Harry noticed Professor Quirrell watching him from a distance, the defense teacher's eyes following his movements with unusual intensity. Since returning to Hogwarts, Harry had felt increasingly certain that Quirrell was not what he seemed. The stutter, the timidity, the general air of incompetence, all felt like carefully constructed masks. Transfiguration challenged them with turning mice into snuff boxes, a task many students found difficult. Harry, applying the principles of material transformation he'd learned from goblin metalworkers, completed the spell with unusual precision. His snuff box featured delicate silver filigree that McGonagall examined with raised eyebrows. Goblin-influenced design, Mr. Potter, she asked quietly while the other students struggled with their mice. Yes, Professor. They taught me to visualize the atomic structure during transformation, not just the outward appearance. McGonagall's lips twitched in what might have been approval. 5 points to Gryffindor for innovative technique. Though I'd appreciate it if you'd follow the standard method in demonstrations for your classmates' benefit. After classes, Harry led Ron and Hermione to an unused classroom where they could speak privately. He cast a quick goblin detection charm to ensure no eavesdroppers lurked nearby, a simple wandless spell that made his fingertips tingle when they passed over listening devices or concealment magic. The stone is definitely here, he confirmed once satisfied with their privacy. Moved from Flammel's Gringotts vault at Dumbledore's request. But why? Ron asked. Gringotts is supposed to be the safest place in Britain, except maybe Hogwarts. That's just it, Harry said, pacing the room in the measured steps of a goblin in thought. Bringing it here makes no logical sense from a security perspective. Unless the point wasn't just protecting it, but using it as bait, Hermione finished. Setting a trap for whoever wants to steal it. Harry nodded. And that three-headed dog is just the first line of defense. There must be other protections deeper in. So what do we do? Ron looked between them. Tell Dumbledore our suspicions. He probably already knows. We watch and gather intelligence, Harry decided. Especially around Quirrell and Snape. One of them tried to jinx my broom, and I'm increasingly convinced it was Quirrell. Why him more than Snape? Hermione questioned. Snape certainly seems more villainous. Which would make him too obvious, Harry pointed out. In Goblin security training, we learned that the most dangerous infiltrators are those who appear least threatening. They agreed to observe both professors carefully while researching additional information about the stone. Harry would use his goblin financial knowledge to look for unusual patterns, Hermione would continue library research, and Ron would keep his ear to the ground for student gossip. January melted into February, bringing deepening snow and increasing academic pressure. Harry balanced Quidditch practice, coursework, and their secret investigation, while maintaining his private goblin training regimen. Each night, he practiced the exercises Silverclaw had taught him, physical conditioning, dagger work, and the basic wandless magic that goblins mastered from childhood. One evening, while reviewing the Gryffindor team's upcoming match strategy with Wood, Harry noticed something odd in the captain's notes. These equipment requisition numbers don't add up, he commented, pointing to a column of figures. Wood looked surprised. What do you mean? The school budget allocation for team supplies, Harry explained. Based on these figures, Slytherin's getting nearly twice our funding. That can't be right, Hogwarts rules specify equal distribution. How do you even know about budget allocations? Wood asked, bewildered. Goblin education includes financial literacy, Harry replied absently, still examining the numbers. These discrepancies appear systematic, not accidental. Wood scratched his head. Well, everyone knows Snape favors his house, but I didn't realize it extended to Quidditch budgets. May I borrow these figures? I want to check something. That night, Harry spread out the Quidditch budget documents alongside other school records he'd quietly accessed through careful observation and well-timed requests to Percy Weasley, who kept meticulous notes on prefect meetings. Using Goblin accounting methods, he traced money flows through various Hogwarts departments, looking for patterns. This is weird, he muttered to himself after an hour of calculations. There's a recurring withdrawal from the school's general fund every month, but no corresponding expenditure record. The sum wasn't large enough to raise immediate alarm, 100 galleons monthly, but over the school year, it added up to a significant amount. More importantly, the pattern had only begun in September, coinciding with the arrival of the Philosopher's Stone. Harry carefully copied his findings into a coded format he'd developed for sensitive communications with Gringotts. Tomorrow, he'd send Silverclaw a letter asking for discreet verification of whether these withdrawals matched any deposits elsewhere. Someone at Hogwarts was siphoning funds, and Harry suspected it connected to the stone. The following day, after sending his letter with Hedwig, Harry attended his first defense against the dark arts class of the week. Professor Quirrell seemed more distracted than usual, his stutter more pronounced, his turban slightly askew. When Harry asked a question about defensive counterspells, Quirrell's reaction was telling. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face before the stuttering professor persona reasserted itself. After class, Harry deliberately dropped his textbook near Quirrell's desk, using the moment to scan the professor's desktop as he retrieved it. Among the papers, he glimpsed what appeared to be withdrawal forms for the Hogwarts vault at Gringotts, bearing Quirrell's signature alongside the required countersignature from another staff member, Dumbledore's, apparently. SS something else, P. Potter? Quirrell asked, hastily covering the documents. No, Professor. Just clumsy today. Harry straightened, meeting Quirrell's eyes directly in the goblin manner, a challenging stance that often made wizards uncomfortable. For a split second, Quirrell's gaze hardened into something entirely different, calculating, cold, and decidedly unstuttering. Then the nervous facade returned. Be best hurry to your next class. Harry left, his suspicions growing stronger. He needed to share this development with Ron and Hermione, but first, he had potions. Snape was in a particularly vindictive mood, prowling the dungeon classroom like a predator seeking weakness. When Neville's potion began emitting ominous purple smoke, Harry quietly passed him a neutralizing agent under the table, a practice he'd continued despite Snape's initial disapproval. 5 points from Gryffindor for unauthorized assistance, Potter, Snape said silkily, appearing beside their workbench without warning. And detention tonight for bringing non-standard ingredients into my classroom. Harry accepted the punishment without protest. Arguing would only escalate the situation, and besides, detention might provide an opportunity to observe Snape more closely. That evening, Harry reported to the potions classroom expecting cauldron scrubbing or ingredient preparation. Instead, Snape led him to a small side room filled with damaged or improperly brewed potions. These failed student attempts need proper disposal, Snape explained curtly. Neutralize, categorize, and prepare each for vanishing according to toxicity protocols. He pointed to a reference manual. Instructions are there. I assume your Goblin training included proper handling of hazardous materials. Harry nodded, surprised by the assumption of competence. Yes, Professor. Snape studied him briefly. Then I expect this done correctly. I will return in 2 hours. Left alone with the potions, Harry set to work methodically, applying the skills he'd learned from goblin brewmasters. Failed potions could be dangerous, toxic, explosive, or unpredictably magical, requiring careful handling. He was halfway through the task when he noticed something odd about one vial, a purplish liquid that didn't match any of the current class assignments. Checking the label, he found it dated from before Christmas, with ingredients listed that included fluxweed and boomslang skin. Harry's eyes narrowed in recognition. Those were key components in advanced transmutation potions, potentially useful for someone attempting to alter the Philosopher's Stone or bypass its protections. Why would Snape keep a failed attempt at such a potion among student work? When Snape returned, Harry had completed the assigned task flawlessly, with all potions properly neutralized and categorized. Acceptable, Snape pronounced after inspection. I see the goblins taught you proper laboratory discipline, at least. They value precision and safety, Professor, Harry replied. Especially with potentially dangerous materials. Something flickered in Snape's dark eyes, perhaps surprise at receiving a straightforward answer rather than defensiveness. Tell me, Potter, Snape said suddenly, what would you do with unlimited gold? Hypothetically speaking. The question caught Harry off guard, but he considered it seriously. Nothing, sir. Gold created by alchemical means isn't the same as naturally occurring gold. Goblins can detect the difference immediately, it doesn't hold enchantment properly and degrades over time. Snape's eyebrows rose slightly. An unusually knowledgeable answer. Metallurgy is fundamental to goblin education, Harry explained. And immortality? What would you do with that? Now Harry was certain this conversation related to the Philosopher's Stone. Extended life without purpose seems hollow, sir. Goblins believe a well-lived finite existence honors one's ancestors better than endless years of diminishing returns. Snape studied him silently for several uncomfortable moments. You are not what I expected, Potter. That will be all for tonight. As Harry left the dungeons, he pondered the strange exchange. Had Snape been testing his knowledge of the stone's powers? Or probing his intentions toward it? Either way, the interaction left him with more questions than answers. The following morning, Harry received Silverclaw's reply, delivered by a stern-looking Gringotts owl rather than Hedwig. The letter was written in the goblin cipher they developed years ago, requiring Harry to use a small decoding will concealed in his Hogwarts trunk. Once translated, the message confirmed his suspicions. The withdrawals from Hogwarts matched deposits into a private account accessed via a branch office in Knockturn Alley. More importantly, Silverclaw reported unusual inquiries about Flamel's accounts from someone using Quirrell's credentials. Exercise extreme caution, Silverclaw's message concluded. The individual may be working for interests beyond themselves. Gringotts has increased security on all related accounts. Harry shared the information with Ron and Hermione during a whispered conversation in the library. So Quirrell's definitely after the stone, Ron concluded, and he's skimming school funds too. But why would he need to steal from Hogwarts if he's after the Philosopher's Stone? Hermione wondered. It seems small compared to the prize he's really seeking. Harry considered this. Preparation costs, maybe. Or paying accomplices. Either way, it confirms he's up to something beyond his teaching duties. Should we tell Dumbledore? Hermione asked for what felt like the 100th time. Harry hesitated. Not yet. We need more concrete evidence. Quirrell could claim the withdrawals are legitimate expenses, and without proof that he's specifically targeting the stone, it would be his word against ours. So we keep watching, Ron said. But what if he makes his move soon? Then we need to know what protections stand between him and the stone, Harry decided. Beyond just Fluffy. Hermione bit her lip. I've been thinking about that. If Dumbledore set this up, he probably involved other teachers in creating defenses. Each using their specialty. Brilliant, Harry nodded. Sprout would use plants, Flitwick charms, McGonagall transfiguration. Snape potions, Ron added grimly. And Quirrell would know all the defenses, Harry finished. As defense teacher, he'd have been involved in the planning. They looked at each other as the implications sank in. Quirrell didn't just want the stone, he had inside knowledge of its protections. We need to act, Harry said firmly. Tonight, I'm going to do some reconnaissance. Alone, he added as Ron and Hermione started to protest. I have methods for moving undetected. That night, Harry waited until his dorm mates were asleep before silently retrieving his invisibility cloak from its hiding place. The silvery material flowed like water through his fingers as he wrapped it around himself, vanishing from sight. The castle corridors were eerily quiet as Harry made his way toward the 3rd floor. Filch and Mrs. Norris patrolled distant hallways, but Harry avoided them easily, moving with the silent precision taught by goblin security forces. Even invisibility was useless if you knocked things over or breathed too loudly. At the forbidden corridor, he found the door locked with a simple charm that yielded to Alohomora. Beyond, Fluffy's 3 heads snored rhythmically, a small harp playing itself in the corner. Someone had recently passed this way. Harry approached cautiously, noting that the trapdoor lay slightly ajar. Fresh scratches on the floor indicated it had been opened within the past hour. Quirrell had made his move. Without hesitation, Harry slipped through the trapdoor, falling briefly before landing on something soft but disturbingly mobile, Devil's Snare. Recognizing the plant immediately from herbology, he relaxed his body instead of struggling, allowing himself to slip through to the stone floor below. Sprout's challenge, he murmured. 1 down. The next chamber contained flying keys and broomsticks, clearly Flitwick's contribution. The door was already unlocked, confirming someone had preceded him. Harry continued quickly, passing through a room containing a giant chessboard with signs of a recently completed game, pieces lying broken at the edges. Beyond that lay a troll, larger than the one from Halloween, but already unconscious. The stench and fresh blood suggested a very recent confrontation. Harry was getting closer to Quirrell. The next obstacle was purely logical, a line of potion bottles with a riddle. Harry recognized Snape's precise handwriting on the parchment and the elegant simplicity of the challenge. Many wizards struggled with logic problems, relying too heavily on magic instead of reason. Goblins, however, trained extensively in logical thinking. Harry solved the riddle quickly, identified the correct potion for moving forward, and swallowed the small dose. An icy sensation flooded his body as he stepped through black flames into the final chamber. There, as expected, stood Professor Quirrell, straight-backed and unblinking, not a stutter in sight as he examined a magnificent mirror positioned in the chamber's center. The Mirror of Erist, Harry recognized from his research. "I wondered if you would join us, Potter," Quirrell said without turning, his voice clear and cold, nothing like his classroom persona. Harry stepped fully into the room, his hand moving to the concealed dagger at his hip. "I knew it was you." "Did you? Clever child." Now Quirrell turned, smiling unpleasantly. "While everyone suspected poor, stuttering Professor Snape, I operated undetected. Even your goblin-trained suspicion didn't alert Dumbledore, did it?" "You're after the stone," Harry stated. "For yourself?" Quirrell laughed, a chilling sound. "For myself? No, Potter. For my master." He began unwrapping his turban, turning so the back of his head faced Harry. Where there should have been the back of Quirrell's skull, there was another face, chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. "Harry Potter." It whispered. "Voldemort," Harry replied, suppressing the shock that threatened to overwhelm him. Goblins respected powerful enemies enough to speak their names directly, and he would not show weakness now. "Yes," the face hissed. "See what I have become. Shadow and vapor, forced to share another's body, but with the elixir of life, I will create a body of my own." Harry's mind raced through options, assessing the situation as Silverclaw had trained him. Direct confrontation against two opponents in one body, one a powerful dark wizard, presented poor odds. He needed to disrupt their plan first. "You're using the mirror to find the stone," he observed, playing for time. "How does it work?" Quirrell turned back around, facing the mirror again. "I see myself presenting the stone to my master, but where is it? How do I get it? Help me, master." Voldemort's voice replied, "Use the boy." Quirrell beckoned Harry forward. "Come here, Potter. Look in the mirror and tell me what you see." Harry approached cautiously, his goblin-trained instincts screaming warnings. The Mirror of Erist showed one's deepest desire, a powerful magical artifact that could trap the unwary in endless longing. But Dumbledore had apparently modified it to conceal the stone. Standing before the mirror, Harry saw his reflection smile at him. The reflection reached into its pocket and pulled out a blood-red stone, then winked and returned it to the pocket. Simultaneously, Harry felt a real weight drop into his actual pocket. Somehow, the mirror had given him the stone. "Well?" Quirrell demanded impatiently. "What do you see?" Harry thought quickly. "I see myself as head of Gringotts security," he lied. "The goblins are honoring me for service to both worlds." Voldemort wasn't fooled. "He lies. He lies. Potter, tell me the truth." Quirrell shouted. "What did you see? Let me speak to him, face to face." Voldemort commanded. "Master, you are not strong enough. I have strength enough, for this." Quirrell turned completely, revealing Voldemort's face again. Its red eyes fixed on Harry with hateful intensity. "Harry Potter, we meet again. You see what I've become? Mere shadow and vapor. I have form only when I share another's body, but once I have the elixir of life, I can create a body of my own. Now, give me the stone in your pocket. Harry stepped back, drawing his dagger in one fluid motion. The silver blade gleamed in the chamber's torchlight, goblin-forged runes flickering along its surface. Goblin weapons? Voldemort laughed coldly. How appropriate for a boy raised by creatures. But blades cannot harm me, Potter. We'll see, Harry replied, shifting into the defensive stance Silverclaw had drilled into him countless times. Seize him. Voldemort commanded. Quirrell lunged forward with inhuman speed. Harry dodged, using the smaller movements goblin fighters employed against larger opponents, but Quirrell managed to grab his wrist. Immediately, searing pain shot through Harry's scar, but something else happened too. Quirrell's skin blistered where it contacted Harry's, causing him to release his grip with a howl of pain. Master, I cannot touch him, it burns. Quirrell examined his blistering hand in horror. Fool! Get the stone! Voldemort screamed. Harry realized his advantage instantly. Whatever protection had saved him as a baby apparently remained active. Direct contact caused Quirrell physical pain. With goblin battle pragmatism, Harry changed tactics, launching himself at Quirrell and pressing both hands to the professor's face. Quirrell screamed in agony as his skin burned and blistered beneath Harry's touch. They fell to the ground, Harry maintaining contact despite the excruciating pain in his own scar. Somewhere, Voldemort was screaming commands, but Harry focused solely on his opponent, applying the goblin principle of finishing conflicts decisively. As his vision began to darken from the pain, Harry felt something cool against his chest, the protection amulet Gornik had given him at Yule, inscribed with ancient goblin runes for shielding and strength. The silver disc seemed to pulse with energy, somehow helping Harry maintain consciousness despite the magical backlash. Quirrell's struggles weakened, his body crumbling almost like sand beneath Harry's grip. With a final terrible shriek, Voldemort's spirit tore itself from Quirrell's disintegrating body, passing through Harry like icy wind. The last thing Harry saw was a smoky wraith fleeing the chamber before unconsciousness claimed him. Extraordinary display of raw magic. Goblin amulet appears to have channeled and stabilized. Might have died without it. Voices faded in and out as Harry drifted through layers of consciousness. His body felt leaden, his eyelids too heavy to lift. The familiar antiseptic smell told him he was in the hospital wing even before he managed to open his eyes. When he finally did, he found Albus Dumbledore sitting beside his bed, half-moon spectacles perched on his crooked nose, blue eyes twinkling with both concern and curiosity. "Good afternoon, Harry," said Dumbledore. Harry tried to sit up, memories flooding back. The stone. Calm yourself, dear boy. Quirrell does not have the stone. Then who does? Is it safe? Dumbledore's expression turned grave. The stone has been destroyed. Nicholas and I had a little chat and agreed it was best. After all, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. Harry absorbed this information. So Flamel will die. He has enough elixir to set his affairs in order, but yes, he will eventually pass on. Harry nodded slowly, the goblin perspective on life and death providing unexpected comfort. A worthy life completed is more valuable than an endless one without purpose. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. A remarkably mature perspective. Your goblin guardians have taught you wisdom beyond your years. They value honor and purpose over mere survival, Harry said. But what about Voldemort? I saw him escape as a spirit. Ah, yes. Voldemort is still out there somewhere, perhaps looking for another body to share. Not being truly alive, he cannot be killed. However, you have delayed his return to power, and that is no small accomplishment. Harry's fingers went to the silver amulet still hanging around his neck. This helped me. Goblin-crafted protection. Indeed. Dumbledore leaned forward to examine it without touching. Fascinating craftsmanship. It appears to have channeled your inherent protective magic, your mother's sacrificial protection, and stabilized it during the confrontation. My mother's protection. Dumbledore explained about Lily Potter's sacrifice, how her love had created a powerful shield that Voldemort couldn't understand or penetrate. The same protection had made it impossible for Quirrell, sharing Voldemort's soul, to touch Harry without experiencing terrible pain. So the goblins were right, Harry murmured. They always said my survival wasn't accidental, that blood magic was involved. Blood magic, Dumbledore repeated thoughtfully. An interesting term for it, though not inaccurate. The oldest and deepest magic often involves life essence, blood, breath, sacrifice. Harry's mind connected disparate pieces of information: goblin blood rituals, his mother's sacrifice, the protective amulet. That's why I survived the killing curse as a baby. And why I could defeat Quirrell even though he was possessed by a powerful dark wizard. Precisely. Love, Harry. The most ancient and powerful magic of all. Dumbledore stood, smoothing his robes. Now, I believe your friends are most anxious to see you. They've been quite persistent in their inquiries about your condition. Before leaving, the headmaster paused. Harry, your upbringing has been unconventional. But I find myself impressed by the results. The goblins have raised a remarkable young man, one with unique perspectives that may prove invaluable in the challenges ahead. After Dumbledore left, Madame Pomfrey allowed Ron and Hermione to visit briefly. They rushed to his bedside, faces etched with concern. Harry! Hermione exclaimed. We were so worried. You've been unconscious for 3 days. 3 days? Harry was startled. What happened after Quirrell? Dumbledore showed up, Ron explained. He was already on his way back when we tried to find him. Said he realized as soon as he reached London that he needed to return to Hogwarts immediately. And the stone? Destroyed, Hermione confirmed. Dumbledore told us this morning. He said it was too dangerous to keep existing. The whole school's talking about what happened, Ron added. All sorts of wild rumors. Some say you dueled Quirrell with goblin magic and turned him to stone. Harry managed a weak smile. Not quite. But my goblin training did help, especially the amulet Gornick gave me. He recounted his confrontation with Quirrell and Voldemort, explaining about his mother's protective magic and how the goblin amulet had somehow stabilized it. Hybrid magic, Hermione breathed, fascinated. Wizard protection channeled through goblin craftsmanship. I don't think that's ever been documented before. Because wizards rarely respect goblin magic enough to study it properly, Harry pointed out. They dismiss it as creature magic without understanding its sophistication. Ron shook his head in amazement. Mental, all of it. But brilliant. Wait till Fred and George hear you fought you-know-who with a goblin dagger and magical skin-burning powers. Madame Pomfrey shooed them out shortly after, insisting Harry needed rest. He spent another day in the hospital wing before being released just in time for the end-of-year feast. The Great Hall was decked in Slytherin green and silver, they had won the House Cup. Harry took his place at the Gryffindor table amid whispers and stares. His confrontation with Quirrell had elevated his already considerable fame to new heights. Dumbledore arrived moments later and the room fell silent. Another year gone, the headmaster announced cheerfully. And what a year it has been. Hopefully your heads are all a little fuller than they were, you have the whole summer ahead to get them nice and empty before next year starts. He proceeded to announce the current house points, confirming Slytherin's victory for the 7th year running. The Slytherins cheered while the other houses, particularly Gryffindor, looked disappointed. Yes, well done, Slytherin, said Dumbledore. However, recent events must be taken into account. The room went very still. I have a few last-minute points to award. First, to Mr. Ronald Weasley, for the best played game of chess Hogwarts has seen in many years, 50 points. Ron turned purple with shock as Gryffindor cheers erupted. Second, to Miss Hermione Granger, for the use of cool logic in the face of fire, 50 points. Hermione buried her face in her arms, overwhelmed with emotion. Third, to Mr. Harry Potter. Dumbledore continued, and the room hushed. For pure nerve, outstanding courage, and the remarkable integration of two magical traditions in defense of others, 60 points. The Gryffindor table exploded with cheers. They were now tied with Slytherin for the House Cup. Dumbledore raised his hand for silence. There are all kinds of courage. It takes bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom. The Great Hall erupted into bedlam as Gryffindor's new total surpassed Slytherin's. Even Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff joined the celebration, so eager were they to see Slytherin's winning streak broken. Which means, Dumbledore called over the storm of applause, we need a little change of decoration. He clapped his hands, and the green hangings became scarlet and the silver became gold, the huge Slytherin serpent vanished and a towering Gryffindor lion took its place. Harry joined in the celebration, but part of him, the goblin-trained part, felt uncomfortable with the last-minute point adjustment. In goblin culture, changing the rules after the fact would be considered dishonorable, regardless of who benefited. He resolved to share this perspective with Dumbledore at some point, though not tonight. Snape's face was tight with controlled fury as he mechanically shook McGonagall's hand. When his eyes met Harry's across the hall, there was neither the hatred Harry had come to expect nor any particular warmth, just calculating reassessment. Exam results arrived the following day. Despite his adventure with the Philosopher's Stone, Harry had performed exceptionally well, particularly in Transfiguration and Potions. Hermione, naturally, achieved the highest grades of the first years, while Ron passed comfortably. As they packed their trunks for the journey home, Harry carefully stowed his most valuable possessions, the invisibility cloak, his father's letter, the goblin amulet that had helped save his life, and the silver dagger he'd crafted himself. "Will you write over summer?" Ron asked. "Dad would love to hear more about goblin culture if you're allowed to share." "Of course," Harry promised. "And you're both welcome to visit Gringotts if your parents approve. I could show you some of the public areas, at least." Hermione looked thrilled at the prospect. "Really? That would be fascinating." The train ride to London passed pleasantly with games of exploding snap, remaining sweets from their supplies, and speculation about the adventures next year might bring. As King's Cross approached, Harry changed from his wizard robes into the formal goblin-styled clothing he wore outside Gringotts. "Why the fancy get-up?" Ron asked, eyeing the silver-embroidered vest and precise tailoring. "Respect," Harry explained. "Silverclaw is a high-ranking warrior taking time to meet a ward. Appearing properly demonstrates that I value his position." Wizard fashion could learn something from that, Hermione observed, watching Harry adjust the ceremonial dagger openly worn at his hip. Now that he was leaving school grounds, he needn't conceal it. The platform was crowded with families greeting returning students. Harry spotted Silverclaw immediately. The goblin warrior stood straight-backed and dignified amid the chaos, ignoring the wary glances from wizard parents. Beside him, surprisingly, stood Nagrek, looking thoroughly uncomfortable but determined to be there. "You didn't mention Nagrek was coming," Hermione said as they collected their trunks. "I didn't know he was," Harry replied, genuinely surprised. His relationship with Silverclaw's nephew had improved dramatically, but Nagrek usually avoided wizard spaces when possible. Harry approached his goblin family with formal posture, showing proper respect before breaking into a genuine smile. "Honored guardian, I return from my studies." Silverclaw returned the formal greeting, then clasped Harry's shoulder in what had become their traditional gesture of affection. "You've grown again," he observed with mild disapproval. "More wizard food?" "Unavoidable, I'm afraid," Harry replied in gobbledygook. Then, switching to English, he introduced Ron and Hermione. To everyone's surprise, Nagrek stepped forward and addressed Hermione directly. "You're the one who solves riddles and studies ancient languages?" Hermione blinked in surprise. "Yes, I enjoy puzzles and research." Negrek nodded as if confirming something, then produced a small wrapped package. For summer study. Harry mentioned your interest in alternative magical theories. Hermione accepted the package with wide eyes. Thank you. That's incredibly thoughtful. Practical, Negrek corrected gruffly. Wizards should understand goblin perspective. Prevents misunderstandings. Ron received a similar package, though he nearly dropped it when Negrek informed him it contained a practice dagger. Blunted, obviously. For coordination training. As they said their goodbyes, Harry promised to arrange visits later in the summer. Watching his friends depart with their families, Hermione with her curious dentist parents, Ron with his boisterous red-headed clan, Harry felt the familiar tug of his divided life. You've made true friends, Silverclaw observed as they left the station. Good allies for challenging times. Are challenging times coming? Harry asked, hearing something in his guardian's tone. Silverclaw's expression grew grave. Gringotts' intelligence suggests movement among former Death Eaters. Nothing concrete, but whispers. Your encounter with the Dark Lord's spirit has not gone unnoticed in certain circles. They traveled in silence to the Goblin transit station, where Negrek finally asked the question clearly burning inside him. Is it true you killed a professor with your bare hands? Harry sighed. Not exactly. Voldemort's spirit was possessing him. My mother's protection made it impossible for him to touch me without being harmed. And the goblin amulet channeled and stabilized that protection, Silverclaw added, examining the silver disc still hanging around Harry's neck. Gornik will be insufferable with pride when he hears his craftsmanship helped defeat a dark wizard. The transit system whisked them beneath London toward Gringotts, where Harry knew a full debriefing with Ragnarok awaited. He would need to explain everything in detail, the confrontation, the stone's destruction, Dumbledore's revelations about his mother's protection. Will I continue training at Gringotts this summer? Harry asked as they approached the bank. More intensively than before, Silverclaw confirmed. Your experience confirms our suspicions, the Dark Lord is not truly gone. If he returns to power, your unique position between worlds will be both valuable and dangerous. You'll need better weapons, Negrek added matter-of-factly. That little dagger is fine for school, but if you're fighting dark wizards, you need proper goblin-forged steel. And more advanced magical training, Silverclaw continued. Both wizard and goblin techniques. Ragnarok has arranged for specialized tutors. Harry nodded, accepting these developments with the pragmatism his goblin upbringing had instilled. Where a normal 12-year-old might have been overwhelmed by the prospect of preparing for a Dark Lord's return, Harry saw it as a necessary continuation of his education. They emerged into Gringotts' main hall, where goblins nodded respectfully as Harry passed. Word of his confrontation with Voldemort had clearly reached the bank already, earning him new status among the Goblin nation. Gornik waited near the entrance to the lower levels, examining Harry critically. So, you used my amulet to defeat a dark wizard? Acceptable field test. I'll craft you something stronger for next time. Harry smiled despite himself. Thank you, Master Gornik. It literally saved my life. The old forge master grunted in acknowledgement. Good materials properly worked always perform when needed. Unlike wizard trinkets that fail when taxed. He turned to lead them toward Ragnarok's chambers. Come. The director is waiting, and you have much to report. As they descended into Gringotts' depths, Harry felt the weight of his years' experiences settling into perspective. He had confirmed Voldemort's continued existence, discovered more about his parents' sacrifice, and proven that goblin and wizard magic could work together in powerful ways. Most importantly, he had maintained his balance between worlds, honoring his goblin upbringing while embracing his wizard heritage. That balance, he now understood, wasn't a weakness or a division but his greatest strength. Ragnarok greeted them in his private council chamber, where several elder goblins had already gathered. The director studied Harry with calculating eyes that missed nothing, the new confidence in his stance, the visible maturation in his features, the goblin amulet prominently displayed over his heart. Welcome back, Harry of the Silverclaw line, Ragnarok said formally. Your first year among wizards has proven even more eventful than anticipated. Thank you, Director, Harry replied with proper respect. I return with knowledge and experiences to share. Good. Begin with your confrontation with the one wizard's fear to name. Spare no detail. For the next hour, Harry recounted everything, the financial discrepancies that had first alerted him, his suspicions about Quirrell, the series of protections guarding the stone, and finally, the face-to-face encounter with Voldemort's parasitic existence. The goblins listened intently, occasionally asking precise questions about magical interactions or specific details of the confrontation. They were particularly interested in how the goblin amulet had interacted with Lily Potter's protection magic. A hybrid defensive channel, Gornick mused. Wizard intent flowing through goblin metalcraft. Theoretical texts mentioned possibilities, but no documented cases existed. Until now. This changes certain assumptions about magical compatibility, another elder observed. Potentially significant for future applications. More immediately significant is confirmation of the Dark Lord's continued existence, Ragnarok said, bringing them back to the primary concern. Our intelligence network reports increased activity among former Death Eaters. Some appear to be positioning assets for quick liquidation. Preparing for his return, Silverclaw translated grimly. Ragnarok nodded. Which brings us to your continued training, young Harry. Events have accelerated our timeline. You must be prepared for what comes. I'm ready, Harry said simply. Good. Beginning tomorrow, you will train with our elite security forces 3 mornings weekly. Afternoons will divide between advanced metalcraft with Gornick and magical theory with Blacktooth. Additionally, we've arranged for a discreet wizard tutor to advance your wand skills beyond Hogwarts curriculum. It was an intensive schedule, but Harry welcomed it. The encounter with Voldemort had shown him both his strengths and limitations. There is one more matter, Ragnarok continued. The Potter vaults contain certain artifacts of significant magical potential, items your ancestors created or collected over generations. It may be time for you to examine these more thoroughly. Harry nodded, thinking of his father's invisibility cloak. I'd like that. To understand more of my wizard heritage while honoring my goblin upbringing. Well said, Ragnarok approved. That balance will serve you well in the challenges ahead. Later that evening, Harry settled into his chamber in Gringotts' residential section. Hedwig perched contentedly on her stand, already readapting to underground living with remarkable flexibility. His Hogwarts trunk sat open, wizard textbooks and robes partially unpacked beside his goblin possessions. On his small desk, he'd placed 3 photographs in silver frames, one of his parents dancing at their wedding, one of himself with Silverclaw taken on his 10th birthday, and a new one of himself with Ron and Hermione by the Hogwarts lake. Different parts of his life, visually connected. As he prepared for sleep, Harry reflected on Dumbledore's words about his mother's protection. Love, the most powerful magic of all. The goblins hadn't described it that way, speaking instead of blood sacrifice and intent magic, but perhaps they were simply different perspectives on the same fundamental truth. That synthesis, seeing connections between seemingly different magical traditions, might prove his most valuable skill in the battles to come. Not just goblin-raised or wizard-born, but something new, a bridge between worlds. With that thought, Harry closed his eyes, ready for whatever challenges the summer would bring. Voldemort was still out there, gathering strength for his return. When that day came, Harry would be ready, armed with goblin steel, wizard spells, and the unique perspective of someone who belonged to both worlds yet remained entirely his own person. The boy who lived, raised by goblins, would face the darkness on his own terms. And neither world would ever be quite the same. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.